lineup of your favorite show. At producer, 5'11" from Blanchester, the Cow Killer, Casey McCollister. And comic engineer, standing at 4'8", the pride of the West Side, Elliot Rearing. And your host, weighing 150 pounds, soaking wet, from Hamilton, Ohio, Ace Fowler.
Well, we're here. We're here on a lovely Tuesday. Tuesday in Hamilton, Ohio. Weather's starting to turn. I looked at the weekly forecast, and boy, oh boy, is the temperature's finally getting to where it's bearable. It's bearable. We finally made it out of what I would consider winter here in Southwest Ohio, which makes me pleased. Another thing I was thinking about on the way in was, back to middle school football for me. I was in 7th grade. I went to my 3rd practice, and I was about 4 foot nothing. I had everybody else on the team was essentially much, much bigger than me. Late bloomer, as they say. And I thought at myself after the 3rd practice, I'm going to go home. I'm going to tell my parents I'm done with football. I'm quitting. Done. 7th grade, 3 practices in, I'm out. And something that was told to me, still sticks to me today, is that if you're going to quit, it's going to make it easier to quit everything else. Are you a quitter or not? And I thought, and I sat there, and I just said, you know what? I guess I'm not a quitter. So I'll just bear through 7th grade football. So I did, never played football ever again, but you can't say I quit. So today, I'll be honest, I woke up this morning after about a good, cool 3 hours of sleep, and I thought to myself, I'm just going to send a text into the boys and just say, hey, you can figure it out. But I thought, you know what? If you quit now, then it'll be easier to quit tomorrow. So we got a long week ahead of us.
Wow.
Got a long week ahead of us.
That was
inspiring. So here I am. And I don't know if I'm going to bring much to the table today, but it is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. And I'm going to lean heavily on what we call my teammates today.
Wow. I'm ready to go after that speech.
Right. I bet
I'm
you
ready
are.
just to run through the wall.
I bet you
are. The leader's saying...
Are you a quitter, Elliot?
Well, I'm not a quitter. I'm not. Well, sometimes I'm a quitter.
When have you quit in life?
When do I quit?
Yeah, when have you quit?
When I'm in a bad mood, I quit.
Yeah.
When I'm in a real bad mood, I quit. I roll over and I just quit.
So you're just
But listen, when my leader's saying he needs us to pick him up, he's been shot twice in the leg, he's been shot in the torso.
That's
he needs
right.
somebody to carry him across the goal line, the finish line. He has to cross enemy lines. That's going to be us today. We're going to get you across the lines.
Well, I'll tell you what we're gonna get into, because I was thinking to myself, if I was a real warrior, as they say, I would have bought a subscription to Cincinnati.com and read an article that people are going up in arms about. But luckily for me, Casey McCollister read it. We'll get into T. Higgins' contract situation later in the show. The Reds, they found a way to win. Don't want to steal all the headlines, but they found a way to win. That's good news. The offense looked like they wanted some competitive at-bats last night. They had like 5 or 6 different guys that at the end of the game you thought to yourself, wow, they had a pretty good day at the plate. LeBron James, I don't know if we'll get to him, so I just want to add this in the top end. I said to myself, or I said to you, Elliot, if there was a Venn diagram of people that are unbelievably good at basketball and also babies, I don't know what other word to say it, crybabies.
Yeah.
He would be the epicenter of the Venn diagram. I'm not taking anything away from LeBron James, but he's reached new lows now. He's trying to punk fans that are talking
smack,
doing the crybaby face, I guess, on the sidelines. He's out here trying to punk them, and then he's laughing about it on the court. I mean, listen, I know he's frustrated. He's a competitor, because at the end of the day, no one likes losing. But my gosh, it's hard to defend this guy right now. Somebody needs a who's able to pull LeBron to the side and just say, hey, LeBron, like, you're one of the best players of all time, if not the greatest player of all time. Let's just try to keep that in perspective next time you're trying to punk out old office Betty White over there that is about to have. She's going to go back to her 9 to 5 tomorrow. You don't stoop to that level. But hey, to each their own. I don't know. You have a problem with that, Reader? You're a big LeBron guy. Does that rub your heart a little bit wrong?
Listen, I think that when people are a little too hard on old LeBron James, but he is one of the maybe the most popular athlete in the United States of America. So maybe he, earns the spotlight that he gets. But at the end of the day, if the worst thing about LeBron James is that he's kind of a crybaby sometimes, or he's a little political, then he's probably a pretty good guy. And we don't get that a whole lot in this country. We don't get a whole lot with our heroes, our sports heroes. So I'm pro LeBron more often than not. Yes.
I also think that if a fan is going to heckle, the player has a right to heckle back. And LeBron's heckle was very funny. Once I get to the Lakers thing, we can run the clip of the actual heckle, or we can save that clip until the end, or we can do it right now. Let's do it right now. What the hell? There it is. LeBron, angry. He's upset. He's pacing the court. He's blaming the refs. The fan gives him a crybaby, and then he does the little shoulder at her. See, he was laughing. That was fun. That's fine.
Oh, come on. That's what you're mad about?
That's
what you're mad about?
I'm not
That's
mad
more
about
than
it, but I know
fine.
this. When you do something that you're not supposed to do, sometimes your immediate reaction after is to start laughing about it because you want to make it seem like you were joking. He was 100% frustrated. He seems a fan acting a little bit like a fool, yes. But I would like to think that my global athlete that's one of the best ever to play doesn't need to worry about some random, like I said, office manager that's over there making crybaby faces.
So there's two possible scenarios here. One, that he hears his fan heckling him, and he gets angry, and in his anger is like, I'm going to intimidate this woman, and intimidates her.
100% what happened.
And then realizes, oh, that's a bad look. Let's laugh it off.
Correct.
Or hey, there's this woman yelling at me. I'm going to mess with her and then giggle about it. I think the latter is more. I think that's more likely than him like getting so wound up. He's like, oh, let me intimidate this woman. Oh, that's a bad look. Now let's laugh it off. I don't think that's what happened.
No, he
that's
walked.
100%
He walked over to that woman who was taunting him. He taunted back and then smiled at her and laughed, and she laughed too, and we all laughed. It was that's you know what, that lady now has a story to tell for the rest of her life, thanks to LeBron James, and that's the kind of man he is, the leader he is.
Man, you really think that? You think that LeBron's a great
Oh,
leader?
yes, I do.
mean, we're grasping at straws if this is how we're going to try and tear down LeBron James.
I'm not trying to tear down LeBron, but I'm also not going to sit here and act like he can't be a great basketball player, but then also have some sincere inefficiencies right now later in his career when it comes to being able to handle failure, quite honestly, because he's not failed a whole lot in his career. He, right now, is showing some of his characteristic traits on the floor. Yeah. I mean, you could say whatever you want, but again, you harken back to what he's saying in post-game press conferences. He's laughing at the idea, or he's saying, you know, someone asked him yesterday if it was his last game in a Laker uniform. He kind of like smiled, smirked a little bit, like, you know, a little bit like a middle schooler, and then was like, I'm not going to answer that right now.
He likes the drama. He likes the drama.
Okay, so he's a little bit of a prima donna. There it is.
No, nobody ever
Fair
debated
enough.
that. He's been the same his entire career.
Right, when he was, he's been the same. He's been 20. We're in year 21 of LeBron James.
When he
and
was
he's
in
pretty much been the same player.
When
the
he was
entire
in
time.
Miami, he was still flopping around the court if somebody tried to throw a body on him.
He had an ESPN special about what team he was going to go play for. Yeah, he likes the attention. He's a little bit of a prima donna, but I'm not going to tear down LeBron because he had some fun with a fan.
What about that one time when the fan hit the half-court shot and he went over and gave him a big old hug during the middle of the game? Do you think he should have been focused on basketball?
No, who's saying that?
Well, I don't know. I think you're kind of saying it.
I never said he had a problem focusing on basketball. I say he has a problem with
Well, so
handling
you're
adversity.
saying-
He has a problem with handling adversity.
Yeah,
if
but you're
something goes wrong, it's always someone else's fault.
Yeah, but you're saying-
that's the truth. How many head coaches has this guy had throughout of his career? I mean, how many guys is he going to run out of town?
Are we going to sit here and pretend head coaching matters in the NBA?
Well, it certainly seems to matter.
I don't think so.
You don't think so at all?
No,
not at
really.
all.
Not really.
Not at all. Doc Rivers, there's no
I think
explanation for Doc
I think
Rivers.
these teams fire their coaches left and right midway through the season, and it really doesn't matter that much.
Yeah, I think we're listening to a guy that's never watched NBA
I think there's
basketball
I
that
think there's a
often, and now
couple.
he's just
I think there's
spouting
a,
off
I
at the
think
mouth.
Eric Spoelstra is one of the better coaches in the NBA. I think Greg Popovich is one of the better coaches in the NBA. But if you're not in that upper echelon, you have Luke Walton coaching an NBA team, and that team still makes the playoffs. So yeah, I have a hard time believing coaching in the NBA matters to the most degree. Correct.
I would just fundamentally disagree. I I'm not going to try to tear down LeBron. I like LeBron. I've watched
Seems like
LeBron
that's what you're
play.
doing, though.
But I also can admit when I'm watching somebody act like a little bit of a prima donna and a baby, I can call it out as well. Like, just because you're the greatest basketball player of all time, again, I don't think excuses the fact that you can complain every other play about the refs. You can try to punk a fan in the first row. You can go to a press conference and then say it's just basketball, and then the day later sit there and basically blame everybody else but yourself. Meanwhile, I'm just saying, again, you could, and this isn't to say like which, it all comes down to what stylistic person would you rather be around. I'd rather be around someone like a Kobe that is going to essentially take the blame, say he needs to get better, make no excuses, and you move on. You don't need to sit there and point the finger at everybody. And that's what he does more often than not. And you know what? I can still admit he's great at basketball. Doesn't take anything away for how great he is. But I will say that if he wasn't great at basketball, which person would you be like, you know what? I can get behind this guy. I could rally behind this guy. That's someone that I would want to be my leader. It's not the way that LeBron James acts, personally. All right. I didn't have that on the rundown today. We do have headlines. I'm going to guess. I'm going to go out on a limb here. From a radio perspective, we're not going to get all the way through those headlines, but we can give it a shot. We can. Let's see what you got, Elliot.
What'd you say?
Got any more LeBron headlines?
Yeah, I mean, we have to talk about they're heading to Cancun. LeBron's heading to Cancun. All right, so we'll start with the Reds. We might not be able to finish it, but that's okay. The Reds win 5-2 over the Padres. For those who did not stay up and watch the game, Nick Lodolo went 7 innings. He struck out 11, and he allowed 1 earned run. That was in the first inning on a home run. So that guy's probably the ace of the team again. I like changing that every week. I like changing who our ace is every single week. I think that makes baseball a lot more fun. Elly De La Cruz, he started the game out in the top of the first with a 450-foot blast to deep left center. This is the first player to have 18 stolen bases and 8 home runs since at least 1900. I'm pretty sure that's an accurate fact. Jeimer Candelario, the very next day after this entire fan base is on him, he comes out with a 2-for-4 performance. Many were saying it's because of Trace. He went to the candy shop, got a couple candies, and now the Candy Man is doing what the Candy Man can.
That was really nice. That was poetic. Some would say that you should be next in line, right? You should be next in line at Dr. Seuss and see if they can't put you in the line.
Yeah,
of
Dr.
folks
Seuss
that
was
are
a
gonna
bad guy though.
Dr. Seuss, bad guy?
I didn't know that. But having said that, I'm not very cultured, so that doesn't shock me.
Yeah.
Turns out that if you're writing rhymes for children, you might have some screws loose. Perhaps I don't know. Maybe. I don't. To be fair, hand up. No idea. No idea what exactly this guy did. Just so we're all aware, I'm flying blind, so maybe I should just stop talking. But yeah, Candelario,
I believe he was
thank you for
unfaithful.
cashing a ticket. By the way, I really do appreciate that. Over 1.5 hits, never in doubt.
Never in doubt. The Reds are back at it tonight at 9:40 p.m. Nick Martinez faces off against Yu Darvish. Kind of seems like that Wednesday game when they played, or Thursday game when they played Zach Wheeler last week. A little bit. Around the league, and again, we're gonna take a break after I finish the baseball headlines specifically. But the Athletics beat the Pirates 5-1. The A's, the Sacramento A's, they have now won 4 of their last 5. Don't look now. The Braves, they had a no-hitter going through 7. They led 1-0 heading into the bottom of the 9th, but Mitch Garver smashed a walk-off 2-run blast to beat the Atlanta Braves. The Mariners are victorious 2-1. The Dodgers, they won 8-4 over the Diamondbacks. The Phillies, they crumbled against the Angels. A lot of unearned runs scoring there. Twins, they beat the White Sox 3-2. And Minnesota, they have won 8 games in a row. The Rays scored 1 in the top of the first, and nobody scored another run in that game against the Brewers. The Brewers lose 1-0 to the Tampa Bay Rays. They just unveiled their new uniforms, their City Connects yesterday. They were absolutely phenomenal. The Cubs, they won 3-1 over the Mets. Severino held off the Cubs, I believe, until the 8th inning. Is that correct, Reed, with a no-no?
Had a no-no, yep, going into the 8th.
So the Cubs come back. They win the game 3-1 on a Christopher Morel top of the 9th home run. Reed doesn't like Christopher Morel, says he's a bad player constantly. He hates his own team, this guy, Reed. And Christopher Morel, he saves him yet again. So shout out to Christopher Morel. Any final thoughts on Christopher Morel?
Christopher Morel is diet right version of Javi Baez, but yeah.
You don't like him?
I think
Admit you don't like him.
I like Christopher Morel. He's just a little kitty cat with those little whiskers he puts on. Here's the thing about Christopher Morel. He's like Javi Baez, but worse. So, yeah.
Justin Turner, he had his 16th multi-home run game of his career. Blue Jays hold on to beat the Royals 6-5. The Orioles shut out the Yankees 2-0. A look at the NL Central standings. I think I do this every Tuesday. The Cubs lead the division now. 18-11 they are. The Brewers are a half game behind them with 17 wins. The Reds, 2 games back. Pirates and Cardinals don't matter. So that's it for the baseball headlines. We'll get into some of the other headlines coming back.
Cardinals don't matter anymore. Is that where we're at now? I'm all for it. I was the one I think champion the idea that I don't think the Cardinals are very good anymore. But since they're the Cardinals and they've had quite the run since we've been alive, and they've had a great organization, that you just give them the benefit of the doubt. You give them the benefit of the doubt.
Let's talk about it when we come back.
Are we thinking to ourselves that could possibly be the falling of the dynasty, at least in our lifetimes, of the Cardinals? I don't know if that is going to be the case. But when we come back, we'll talk about the Reds, Nick Lodolo, and more on 1410 Wing AM. I got the clock, by the way. I mean, listen, you act like we got to be off there every 15 minutes. I mean, Jesus. Right? I mean, you're over here like, we'll talk about that when we come back. Like, I mean, I got it.
Well, I was just making sure. Last week we were starting to go over a little bit. This is my job. I got to monitor the clock.
Well, I have no clock still, by the way.
Well,
just so we're all aware.
That's because I'm the clock.
I'm also still don't know the segment, what's the last segment and what's not the last segment.
Well, you don't know what we just finished segment 1.
I know. I'll start keeping track.
5 seconds.
It's not like we have anything else though around here that could help.
Let's do 5 seconds of silence.
Instead, I'm just keep looking at Dubai and the Jupiters of a race Neo.
Wolf on Wall Street.
All right, welcome back into Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. We got halfway through the headlines. We got halfway there. We got through the Reds, which is kudos to the Reds for finally winning a baseball game on the front half of a series. We'll see if they can't find a way to win a series. But Elliot, I'll turn it back over to you so we can stay on track here and finish the headlines.
Yeah. Thanks, Trace. NBA. Celtics, they take a 3-1 series lead. They cruised past Miami yesterday. Miami's kind of bad. 102-88. Porzingis, he left early after a non-contact injury. Derek White scored 38 points. He went 8 for 15 from beyond the arc. Tatum added a double-double as well, a 20-point double-double. Celtics move on. The Celtics might have the easiest path to an NBA Finals I've ever seen in my entire life. The 1 seed in the West, the Thunder, they finished off the sweep of the Pelicans. The Pelicans are heading to Cancun. 97-89 the final yesterday. Shai and Jalen Williams each scored 24 points en route to the victory. The Lakers, again, mentioned it. They're joining them. Same flight, heading out to Cancun. They're flying away. After losing the series to the Nuggets, Jamal Murray hit his second game winner of the series. They won 108-106, and the Lakers will just never be able to beat them. I think they are now 1 of 12 in their last 12, so shout out to them. LeBron did have he did drop 30 points, 9 boards, and 11 assists. You can't really play better if you're LeBron James. He tried his best. Jokic dropped 25 points and 20 boards. Murray scored 32 points as well. NHL, the Dallas Stars, they evened up the series to a piece.
Whoop, whoop.
They won last night 4-2. How about that? The Panthers, they won the series against the Lightning 4-1 after a 6-1 victory last night. And NFL news, Travis Kelce, he has been extended. It's a 2-year, $34.25 million contract. I believe there's an option at some point, 2027, I think, when he'll be 38 years old. It seems the Bengals were never really going to consider T. Higgins either. That's what we're going to talk about later today, as the Kelly Conway article dropped sometime last afternoon. And FCC, Casey sent this over to me. This is big news. The club has acquired Venezuelan forward Kevin Kelce on loan from the Ukrainian Premier League, Shakhtar Donetsk, as a U22 initiative player. Casey, why don't you explain that to me like I'm 4?
So we acquired this guy in January of not January. I'm sorry. We were looking at this guy, bringing him into the club for a while now. I guess now it just finally processed through. 19 years old. He's 6'3". He's basically going to replace Brandon Vasquez's role on this team. We never really went out and got that replacement. We now finally have a young, talented forward on this team to look forward to and kind of develop. And if he does well, we have the option to buy him out. So that's the other part of this equation here is, it's a safety valve, so to speak. They have that option to buy. They don't have to buy him. He's only here for the 2024 season. And then if he doesn't play well, he doesn't play well. It is what it is. You can leave the team and go back to the Ukrainian league. But from what I've seen, a lot of people really like this kid. He's had a lot of good games, good appearances internationally against national teams. He's done very well. He's just a really good football player. Guys really like him. I haven't seen anything negative.
And by football,
I mean soccer.
thank you.
Yeah. But
yeah, I'm excited for him.
Yeah, it's just exciting that we're getting a answer there where we've been really struggling offensively. Now we have some extra depth and some youth there. Because
where's this guy coming from?
The Ukrainian Premier League.
And is that like the penal league? Is that lower than the MLS? Is that higher than the MLS?
I think it's higher than the MLS, isn't it?
I have no clue, to be honest with you.
It's close.
I would say that it's like he's played against Barcelona, if that makes you feel any better. He's played against relevant teams and won.
And me and Reed played against the Midland Redskins when we were 16-2. It doesn't make us anywhere near the league that they were in. So I'm just saying.
Battle tested.
I don't want to say that that's not the best evidence of whether or not this guy's good or not. But it doesn't do me any justice of saying that he played against Barcelona. I mean,
I love when Casey just stares back and he knows where this segment's going. Trace, what are your thoughts on Kevin Kelsey?
I have no idea who Kevin Kelsey is, if we're being honest. Okay. Are we talking about the FC player that we just got? Is that the person's
just that
name?
Whole segment, yeah.
Yeah, the whole segment. I don't know. Like I said, I'm trying to get into soccer, but I'm not going to sit here and act as if like I'm dying over every move that the FC Cincinnati folks make down there. I hope they do well. I hope they do well for the city.
Mr. Mo wants to know, did you just compare Barcelona and some random Midland team?
Yes, I did.
Some people are going to question.
Yeah, I mean, like Barcelona is one of the best Premier League teams in the world. So
what I was referring to is that sometimes you can play against competition that you're not competitive with. Just because you played against somebody,
they beat Barcelona 1-0.
That's like Florida. Okay, they beat
that
helps.
That was probably a friendly, to be honest with you. I'm just reading some of the stuff on this article. I didn't really have time to look at it because it just broke today.
Okay, fair enough.
But
Casey, Barcelona is not Premier League.
Well,
La Liga.
Whatever. It's one of the better teams.
I don't even know.
It's one of the better teams in the world.
This is called shark-infested waters right now that I have no clue anything about soccer.
That whatever from Casey, that whatever was so – he was so mad at us. He was just like, whatever. I'm over this. Just – let's move on.
Can we be honest? Casey likes soccer like Elliot likes golf.
Like Elliot
likes that's the way I perceive it. Now it doesn't mean I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm just saying, from time to time, Elliot enjoys golf. He watches golf. He watches the majors. Sure. But if I asked him who the 40th best player in the world was, I'd throw up a random name on a Sunday of Augusta that's like 15 groups back of the leaders. He's probably going to be like, I don't know who this guy is, which is perfectly fine. So having said that, you are very much the same. You can say whatever you want, big soccer guy, this, that, and the other. You're over here digging into the weeds of Bengals content every single day. And you know what? You can be a fringe FC guy, which is fine, but I don't want you to feel like you got to be this big time soccer guy.
I am not a big time soccer guy. I'm not even close to that.
This is breaking news.
Coming out of the closet today.
But listen,
this is breaking news.
If I don't do this, then it will never be talked about, and I feel like that's just not a good business model.
Let me ask you this though.
So let me finish this. Let me finish this. I am a fan of FC, but other than that, I have no clue about the rest of the soccer world. Could not care less.
Let me ask you
Could
this.
not care less.
Let me ask you this. Some are saying, though, if we don't know anything about FC, maybe we should keep our mouths shut on the topic. Otherwise, we're going to say Barcelona's in the Premier League when they're in the La Liga.
La Liga, Premier League, who cares?
They're
They're a great team.
Our first segment was about the NBA, and I think we watched a total of six NBA games in our lifetime in this room. So, I mean, what are we doing here?
Viewers are Alex says viewers are dropping talking about soccer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I get what Casey's coming from. I understand. At some point, you want to make sure that you give well-rounded, good coverage of all the teams that are local. And if you don't ever talk about a specific team, then how are you supposed to grow any type of viewership from it? Maybe some are saying that on ESPN right now while they're running NFL highlights and NFL draft analysis for the next 3 weeks. And then after those 3 weeks are done, they're going to talk about the OTAs. And after the OTAs, they're going to talk about spring camp. And then after spring camp, it's going to be preseason. And then we're going to be like, finally, we're back. We're going to talk about real football. But over the summer, we're just going to have to make up stuff because nobody cares about baseball nationally.
Yeah, it's true.
But that's true. That's what happens.
Mouse says he scored 2 goals this season in 265 minutes. That's 1 goal in 130 minutes of Champions League.
That's
We'll
pretty
see
good.
we'll see what ultimately happens. This guy's coming in. He sounds like he's an exciting player. We're excited to have him. But if he's not good, we can ship him back.
He debuted with the Venezuelan U23 team on January 24th.
Yeah. All right, I got to be honest. I at this point, I don't even know the guy's name anymore. Can you give me it?
Let me look it up again.
All right. Well, anyways, best of luck to him.
This is Kevin Kelsey.
Kevin Kelsey, best of luck to him and his family. And I will maybe watch
You'll be cheering.
a game. I'll
You'll
be cheering for him. Yes, I will. Speaking of cheering, the Reds, I don't know if this is a sign of more to come or if we're in a situation where this was just a one night. Let's all maybe get a little overly excited. Candelario, couple big hits. Espinal, of all guys, couple good at bats. There was competency in the lineup for the first time in quite some time last night. But the biggest storyline of all the storylines was Nick Lodolo. I don't know how much of this game you got a chance to see, but essentially the very first at bat of the game that he obviously goes up there. Profar takes him deep, and you find yourself in a position thinking that Nick Lodolo is probably going to have maybe a rough night. But turned out quite the opposite. The best I've ever seen him throw, personally. Best I've ever seen him throw. Bounce back, walks 2 guys the very next inning, finds a way to strike out the side, and then from there retires his last 18. So,
yeah, he got excuse me, he got in one jam all night, and he got out of it with ease. I'm not going to say with ease, but he got out of pretty damn easily. He's impressive. I think Nick Kirby tweeted it out maybe after his last start. If he's able to stay healthy, if he's able to be here this entire season, this is the league is on notice. The league is absolutely on notice for Nick Lodolo. His stuff is disgusting. He has confidence. He has swagger up there on the mound. This is a guy that can carry this starting pitching rotation 100%, 1,000,000%. So yeah, that's incredible, and we're gonna need him to continue to be that as Frankie is coming back from the shot heard around the world that broke his arm in half, and then we have Nick Martinez obviously tonight trying to fill in that gap. But if we have consistent starts like this from Nick Lodolo, and the consistency thing is what I argue and what I preach every single day, because you can go out and have a good night once every 5 starts. It seems like, and I don't mean to pick on Hunter Green, but every once in a while he'll have like 2 really good starts, and then it'll just fall apart and crumble over the next 2 starts. And Nick Lodolo, if he continues to be this consistent this entire year, we're gonna be in very good shape, and that goes with the rest of the pitching staff as well.
I agree. I think it's easily the strongest part or collective group of this team is the starting pitching, and maybe you could make the case for the bullpen. I just don't know if the bullpen. I've doubted these guys for a long time. I mean, last year towards the back half of the year, I kept saying this bullpen was going to regress. This bullpen was going to regress, and then we find ourselves into this year. They get off to a good start. Now you're asking yourself, are they going to be able to consistently do what they've done? And you start to get to the point now where you believe that this is just how good they might be. Yesterday, I thought in real time, David Bell, as far as making a mistake, it wasn't a mistake. But I think if the injury history wasn't wasn't there for Nick Lodolo, they would have allowed him to continue to throw. He was just at 99 pitches. I do understand that you get to that 100 pitch mark and some magic happens to where you start to become very, very worrisome of your starter. But if it wasn't for the injuries, Lodolo was just cruising. And it did not look all that effort. It did not look like there was high stress at all. It looked effortless. And you thought to yourself, at least I did, let's just keep running him out there until he gives up at least a base runner. Maybe if he gives up a base runner, you can then take him out. David Bell decided not to do that. They pulled him out after the 7th inning, let Fernando Cruz come in, pitch the 8th inning. Fernando Cruz did what he just nearly does every single time, which is throw that splitter. Guys chasing it, goes 1, 2, 3. Going to the 9th inning, they bring Diaz in with a 4-run lead, so it wasn't a save opportunity per se. And it got a little dicey. But give the Padres some credit. They put some good swings on the ball. I thought Diaz looked good despite the fact that it got a little bit hairy at the end. It wasn't the traditional Diaz sometimes where he just walks 3 guys. He got hit a little bit.
I have a question I want to ask you. I have a question I'm going to ask you. And I'm going to ask it now. I'm going to wait for your answer when we come back.
Yeah.
Is there a chance by the end of this season that we have a change in closer?
That's a great question. And we'll answer that on the backside of this commercial break on 1410 Wing AM. Stay tuned. All right, welcome back in to Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Thanks as always to our friends there for supporting us and our show. And you had asked I guess a fun little question.
I think it's a very fun question.
It is a fun question. Will Alexis Diaz be the closer at the end of the year? Because I think what you're hinting towards is Fernando Cruz making a run for his money. And I don't think there's any question that Fernando Cruz, if Diaz struggles in the slightest bit, call it 2, 3, maybe 4 blown saves, I think you could find yourself in a situation where they would make that change, yes. And one thing that they've already done this year that David Bell got to give him some credit for is there has been spots this year where David Bell has decided, you know what, we're going to use our best arms earlier in the game when leverage dictates it, which I love. I know some people like making sure they save their closer for the 9th inning no matter what, but I find myself thinking, you know what, if you have the top of the lineup coming up, and or maybe you find yourself in a tough spot where you need a strikeout and you're in the, maybe the 8th inning, maybe the 7th inning, and the game's on the line, why not bring in your best relievers? And I think that Fernando Cruz is going to find himself being put in those spots more times than not. I would say it goes right now, if we wanted to rank this bullpen, you're probably going Fernando Cruz A or 1, Alexis Diaz 2. It's really close. To be fair to Alexis, he's been fantastic lately. And then after that, I think that you can make some pretty good arguments. Lucas Sims seems to be the guy that David Bell trusts the most. And then after that, Brent Suter, I know he got roughed up a little bit, 4 runs the other night in a situation that he would not been throwing the ball if it wasn't for a big lead, 8-0 lead. So his stat line, or if you want to call it his numbers, might look a little bit off for saying that or suggesting that he would be the next guy in line. After that, though, I mean, I don't know if I'm forgetting someone off the top of my head. Sometimes you can do that. Is there anyone else that you could think of that you would trust the most when it comes to
relievers,
guys coming out of the bullpen?
No, I think for me, it's there's 3 guys that I'm legit. It's Suter, it's Diaz, and it's Cruz that I'm locked in on. Everybody else, I'm still a little bit nervous. Like Buck Farmer doesn't move the needle for me. I say that with love and respect. Emilio Pagan, I think he struggled.
Good.
He's struggled in a couple games. Lucas Sims, I don't trust. Justin Wilson, I don't trust. So I think you nailed it. I do trust Sam Moll for what it's worth. Yeah, Reed.
Yeah. I'm just checking the tilt here. I had to hold up my hand so I could talk. Checking the tilt here.
Yeah.
Weren't you anti Fernando Cruz last year?
Yeah, but here's the thing. Elliot. The good thing is that you can change your opinion
That's
when
right.
new information becomes available to
right.
you.
That's right.
Every
That's
single
right.
time that you see something different in life, you could just say, you know what? All right, I switch my stance. I'm
That's
this
true.
now.
You can do that.
That's a perfect way to get into
Here's-
politics.
I remember last year you getting mad at certain Reds personalities for saying that Fernando Cruz is going to be really good.
Am I allowed to say this? Fernando Cruz, what he's shown this year is I mean, what he was great last year. He was good, very good last year. What he's shown this year is better. He leads all of baseball in whiff percentage. I don't know what whiff percentage is per se, but he leads all of the MLB.
Sounds exactly what it is.
Swing and miss on his splitter. So that's our guy. That's my guy. And yeah, I changed my opinion. This is a sports talk show.
That's right.
I'm allowed to change my opinion on anything I want at any given moment. I've said 4 different guys are the ace of this team, and I'm going to continue to keep changing it. If Nick Martinez, guess what, Reed? If Nick Martinez goes 8 innings tonight and he allows 1 run, ace. Ace. And every one of them, they're all going to be the ace by the end of the year. And I'm going to make it whoever leads the ace tally. I'm going to start keeping notes now. I'm going to say whenever I compare somebody to an ace, I'm going to write it down, and whoever has the most ace tallies is going to be our official ace.
It sounds like you believe that maybe the Reds have multiple aces, that they have really good pitching.
That is certainly what I'm saying. That is certainly what I'm saying. And there's no doubt about it. The Reds pitching staff, I think last year it was a lot of the offense that was carrying the way. Yeah. This year it's pretty much the opposite. It's the pitching staff that's doing God's work right now. And that goes both sides. The bullpen's been very good. I'm picking on some guys just because I don't trust them. It seems like they do walk a decent amount of guys, the bullpen. But saying that, I'm allowed to sit here and say that the pitching staff's carrying this team right now, 100%. And Elly De La Cruz.
Elly De La Cruz is a one-man wrecking crew offensively at this moment. And I want to mention something that happened the other night that it didn't work out in his favor, but I love the idea was he tried to bunt right-handed. It wasn't the best bunt, but it was a bang-bang play at first because of his speed. And I love the idea. People
were mad at that.
That's a disgusting. How could you be mad at that? I think he. You know what that. To me, that proved more than anything. It wasn't so much the action of the play. It seemed like Elly for the first time was just self-aware. He seemed like he had a plan going up to the plate. He understood the situation. That all of those things are IQ plays. Like, it's a one-run game. I'm the fastest guy in Major League Baseball. If I can find a way to get on base, I know ultimately I'm going to get to second base. You don't need to slug your way to second and third base when you're Elly De La Cruz. You can just steal second base. And that's ultimately what he was trying to do. For those that are like, oh, you know, why is he bunting? Well, he's bunting because if he gets on first, he knows inevitably he's going to be on second base a couple pitches later. That's without question what he was thinking.
I think he was also hitless in the series up until that point, so you're trying something new. It's a close game, like Trey says. You're trying to do anything you can to get on base, change it up. I'm going to try to lay down a bunt this at-bat. Right. It didn't work, and I would argue that it was legit flawless execution. Flawless execution by whoever that catcher was. I don't know who the catcher is on the top of my head. But if he was like a millisecond different on his route to that baseball, Elly would have been safe. Any other catcher, Elly would have been safe.
Yeah, well, I don't know if any other catcher would have been safe, but you're right. If he would have just made a bobble in any slightest bit, he would have been safe. And the other thing too is I think that listen, you could sit here and say whatever you want about Elly De La Cruz. The biggest area of concern, which isn't concern, but the biggest area of growth for him as a baseball player is going to be the way he swings the bat from the right-handed side, which is the biggest reason as to why I thought, you know what, this guy's got some self-awareness. He knows that he's not the most productive guy at the plate right now, right-handed, but instead he decided to try to do what was best for the team and find a way to get on base, and I love the idea. And I feel like if you didn't love the idea, it's not that you didn't love the idea, you didn't like the result, which isn't the way that you should probably operate as a fan, because if you're only results-driven, then at some point you're going to look at some plays that he makes, and this is why you probably see it, some plays that he makes, and you're upset that he did it, and then the next day he does the exact same thing, and then just because the other team decided they were going to either make the play or not make the play, you thought the decision was right or wrong. If that catcher, like you had mentioned, fires that ball down the right field line, and next thing you know he's standing at third base, nobody in the world's complaining about the decision.
No. So,
a little bit of hindsight 2020 for those that are watching the game if you didn't like the decision. So that's where
has TJ Friedl has there been any news on TJ Friedl? I feel like we're approaching the 6-week mark. No,
the last I had heard he was going to start a rehab assignment any day now.
All right, because Ian Jabot, unfortunately, he had another setback yesterday.
He did, and then the other thing too here, and I know that this is Reed's favorite topic when we talk about the Reds is all the injuries, but Tyler Stevenson, now you find yourself in a position where I don't know how much you can believe, and I'm not trying to say that they should tell the truth. I just don't know how much you believe David Bell and whoever you want to call it the Reds organization when it comes to these injuries. Like I don't want to say we've been lied to before, but it kind of feels like we've been lied to before. Certain guys are on certain tracks, and then all of a sudden they're not going to be back in the same time frame they were supposed to, where they had a setback here. Or this person, like we always are told, hey, they're going to be back in this time frame, and then very rarely are they ever in this time frame. It very much reminds me of new businesses going into our favorite city that is Hamilton. They're like, well, it's going to come in the fall of 2024, and it really never, ever happens, if ever, a business opens up on time in this city. That's no disrespect. That's the truth. So I'm not expecting TJ Friedl to be back, I guess, anytime soon. It'll be a pleasant surprise if he is.
It would be a very pleasant surprise.
Let's also face the fact that it's not earth-shattering that TJ Friedel's coming back in regards to just like, oh, he's the linchpin of basically this entire offense. But it is another domino effect of just trying to turn the lineup over. Like, that's the biggest area of opportunity for this team, is to start to eliminate, I don't want to call them automatic outs, but just unproductive at bat after unproductive at bat. And Nick Martini, thankfully he had a productive. But between Nick Martini, Luke Maile, and Espinal, for the most part, there were 3 unproductive at bats out of 9 guys every time you rolled the lineup out. You could even add Jonathan India to that until of late as well. So hopefully the tide is starting to turn for this Reds lineup, and we'll get there. As far as Nick Lodolo, I think it's it's not even close anymore that he's their best pitcher. I genuinely don't even think it's close. Do you think that it is?
No, not right now. Like I said, the command and the stuff that he has is better than anybody else's.
Yeah, and I don't like Hunter Green. I'm still champion Hunter Green. I have no problem. Like, people are gonna maybe take this the wrong way. I hope they don't. Is that I just don't think that Hunter Green's ceiling right now. I don't even think his ceiling is as close to what Nick Lodolo could be more times than not. Like, just the pitch mix that Nick Lodolo has, the slider that he has is absurd, and his ability to command a fastball, all 3 of those things makes him, without question, in my opinion, significantly better than where Hunter Green is. And Hunter Green has the ability to be like him, but until he develops a third pitch, in my opinion, I think Hunter Green will be inconsistent. Because I don't know if Hunter Green, if he's able to command his fastball and his sliders, call it, average that day, or maybe a little bit above average that day, he's going to have a pretty good day, more likely than not. But how many times when Hunter Green goes out there are those 2 things true? I don't want to say like less than half, but you get my point. Lodolo, it seemed like last night, for all intents and purposes, was struggling. And you give Derek Johnson hell from time to time. You got to give Derek Johnson some credit. I don't know what he said to Nick Lodolo when he went out there after he walked the first 2 guys, but David Bell after the game even mentioned that DJ had seen something that was going on mechanically, went out there, let Lodolo know, and he said that it's very impressive Lodolo is wise enough to be able to, on the fly, be able to fix something like that, and it go as well as it did. And so shout out to not just DJ, but shout out to Lodolo for making an adjustment as well. So
in 24 innings pitched, he's allowed only 5 earned runs. That's a 1.88 ERA. He has only allowed 1 home run. He has only walked 6 guys, and he has struck out 31. So that's in 9 less innings. He has 4 more strikeouts than Andrew Abbott. And I think, what is that? 5 less innings from Graham Ashcraft. He has 6 more strikeouts. This is a guy that's just right now on fire. Absolutely on fire. And again, health is the biggest thing. Half our guys get hurt throughout the entire year. It's very unfortunate. I'm concerned that Nick Lodolo is going to get hurt. Why am I concerned? I feel like it's bad luck. I feel like at some point the Reds just have some bad luck. Maybe that's a bad excuse. Maybe that's not a valid reason for concern. I just think that's where I am mentally watching this team. And if he's able to stay healthy, I have no doubt in my mind that he's going to be the best pitcher on this staff. No, and not even remotely close. And that's Andrew Abbott is a 3.2 ERA. Hunter Green is a 3.6 ERA. These guys are performing. It's just Nick Lodolo has been miles better in the limited time that he's been here.
I would agree. And it all comes down to Nick Lodolo being able to complete a full season, and maybe that's where you'll earn your trust back. I think it's fair. I think it's fair to question guys that haven't proven it yet. And unfortunately for the Reds, they've had some top prospects come up and not be able to stay on the field. And I think Nick Senzel, even though you can sit here and suggest that that's laughable to think about, but like Nick Senzel was pretty damaging in the minds of folks that would get excited, and then there'd be a letdown. So I think maybe you're guarding your heart there a little bit with Nick Lodolo. Maybe. Just maybe.
Maybe a little bit.
All right. When we come back, we are going to talk about T. Higgins. Whose side are you on? That and more on 1410 Wing AM. All right, we are back. Some are saying better than ever, but I think that would be a lie.
Back and better than ever.
Yeah. Do you know where that phrase came from? Give a shout out. We're on ESPN Radio too, so this is big time ESPN Radio.
Mike
this
and Mike.
Is some are saying the glory days.
Mike and Mike.
100%.
Back and better than ever. Presented by 1-800-Flowers. Was that always
no free ads? But
no free ads.
I do think that. I was wondering one day when I was listening to ESPN Radio in the mornings, obviously, I don't know if I was in college or when I was, but the glory days of Mike and Mike, which shout out to those guys. I mean, they did a show for how long? It was absurdly long. But I did wonder how many flowers one would have to sell to be able to pay for this hotline.
No,
I don't want a wild amount of flowers.
And I can't imagine anybody at 6 a.m. is like, please, let me order a couple flowers right now. I have a hard time believing.
I think it worked. They were on the radio for how long? You don't keep advertisers that long if it's not doing something.
Is that the best ESPN radio show they've ever had?
One would argue maybe, but I think yes.
I don't think anything's been close.
There's never been a better lineup. Obviously, outside of off the bench and Kenner and Kev, there's never been a better lineup than when ESPN, I think, at one time you had Mike and Mike, and then after Mike and Mike, it was Colin. Then after Colin, it was SVP, and then after SVP, they had Stephen A. I mean, that's
loaded.
Yeah,
that's loaded. It does stink the way it ended though. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, there was some scuttle about whether or not they liked each other anymore.
I think Golick kind of got pushed out, and
correct.
And Greeny's still standing. Greeny won. The nerd won.
Yeah. Well, I think Greeny was a pro. To be fair, I mean, I do think Mike was a big part of the show. Why can't I think of his last name right now? Golick. Thank you. I almost said Goldberg. And I knew that was not right. Mike Goldberg. That's a wrestler, right? Maybe?
Goldberg is a wrestler, yes.
Yeah, but it's not Mike. It's just
correct.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, let's move on. We had teased T. Higgins before we went to break, and I did not get a chance to read the article. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of open the floor here for, I believe, Casey, you had a chance to consume the article. Don't know what your opinions are on it, but if you could just lay out the context of essentially the Spark Notes version. I don't know if that dates me or not, but the Spark Notes version of this T. Higgins article that came out yesterday.
Yeah, so I guess the Spark Notes of this story are that T. Higgins and his agent negotiating with the Cincinnati Bengals, they were not anywhere close to what we had thought initially. We thought that they had already figured out the average per year, the total amount per the contract. They were just working out on guarantees. Turns out that's not even the case. Turns out that they can't even agree on a number per year and a total number for the contract. The reports are that T. Higgins was asking for relatively a little bit above $20 million. Reports are right now he's asking for Michael Pittman money, which is roughly $23 million per year. And the Bengals haven't even sniffed 20, apparently. And a lot of this is speculative, if you ask me. I don't know if these are where the facts are on all this, to be honest with you. Could be all from T. Higgins' camp, and in which case you can't really take that with a whole lot of take it with a grain of salt. But if it is true, then just looking at the numbers, that would mean that the Bengals do not see T. Higgins as a top 20 receiver in the NFL. And if you're telling me that that is how they view him, then fine. Don't franchise tag the dude. Because you're paying him $22 million to play for you this year. And if he's that important to your roster, he's probably worth more than the 20th receiver in the NFL, if you ask me. So that's where the disconnect is. Now, whether or not this is all true, whether this is all very factual, is a whole other debate. Kelsey Conway, a known Ravens fan, so you know how I feel about Ravens fans. So the premise of the argument online for the Bengals is T. Higgins a top 20 receiver? And if he is it worth paying him Michael Pittman money? And if you ask me, I think it is. I think it is worth for a team to give T. Higgins that sort of money. But the Bengals so far have done really well with contracts, besides, I guess, Jesse Bates, in my opinion. But that's one out of how many guys have come into this roster since the last 3 years?
We've listened
a lot. So
right.
they know what they're doing in a way. And they obviously don't view T. Higgins as a top 20 receiver. Otherwise, they would probably pay him more than $20 million per year, or that would be what they would offer him. So I don't know how you want to look at it, how you want to spin it. I guess the expectations for us as fans should be that clearly they're not going to get a deal done in the near future, because even if they get the extra money from like Trey Hendrickson, like if they did ship him away, like they're not going to give T. Higgins $20 million. Then what's the conversation even going to be about? You're not going to get Michael Pittman money if that's the case.
This changes nothing. Listen, yeah. I'm not going to do any of the Kelsey Conway. Kelsey Conway's kind of the Gordon Wittenmeyer amongst Bengals fans. People like to say bad things about Kelsey Conway. I'm not going to do that. I will say that it seems a lot of negative news comes from her. Beside the point. Listen, not giving T. Higgins, like we knew that we weren't going to extend him. I think Bengals fans knew that now for months. So this doesn't change anything other than the fact that, hey, how do the Bengals value T. Higgins, which if the report is true, then they don't value him at $20 million. And I'm okay with that. And I'll tell you why I'm okay with that. I have seen now for 4 draft classes, we've said the same thing about each draft class, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, last 5, and including this one, 2024. We've said the same thing. This is a really talented wide receiver class. And you go back and you look at the first round of each of those classes, and the wide receivers hit it like an 80% rate. That's unheard of. And what I'm getting at is maybe it's the new wave of how you structure your roster. And hey, similar to how a decade ago, if like say the Giants had Saquon Barkley a decade ago, if they wouldn't have paid him and let him walk to a rival, we would have been up in arms going, what are they doing? Now we know that's just how teams operate, because the running back position is easy to replace. Maybe that's what the next edge is for wide receiver. Maybe that's where we're going. And listen, T. Higgins is only 25 years old. He'll be 26 to start next year. And so he's still got plenty of time left to play in the league. He still could be a very high-functioning member of this team. But, like, I just see a world in which teams, where we're looking at the Eagles saying, oh, they're spending all this money on top 2 wide receivers. But how has it played out? We don't know. Yeah, you can do it, but we'll see how it plays out. So I'm not worried. This changes nothing. This changes nothing about the Cincinnati Bengals.
So I do agree generally with the premise that receivers are starting to become what the running backs were a couple years ago, or up until this point, I should say, that they're becoming a dime a dozen. But
I don't know about that.
But then the argument is, why even give T. Higgins a franchise tag? Because that's $22 million you could have used to go get whoever else you wanted. That would make it to where we have $30 million left to play with. You could have gone and gotten whoever you wanted with that sort of money. And that's the argument to me, is if you're going to give T. Higgins the franchise tag, you don't even really value him as a top 20 receiver, what are we doing? Just let him walk. Let him get overpaid somewhere else and then go find the value elsewhere. And like you said, we got Jermaine Burton, who would probably be a fringe first-round receiver without the character issues. Like, they could have double-dipped at receiver. We already know that.
A lot of stock in Jermaine Burton. Just going to let you guys know. I've seen this on X.com. All these guys talking about, like, you can say whatever you want. T. Higgins is a pretty damn good receiver. You're going to sit here and suggest to me that old Jermaine Burton's now the T. Higgins? He's a replacement?
That's not my point. They could have easily, though, double-dipped at receiver. We saw that. They had options available if they wanted to.
You guys are acting like replacing T. Higgins is a piece of cake.
Well, they would have clearly traded him away for a second-round pick, which means we get more value
but they
in
did
the draft. But that's what I'm saying, though, is like they had options available to them. If they don't even value him as a top 20 receiver, then, like, why even give him the franchise tag?
Well, listen, if we're talking about $23 million, like, yeah, you sometimes – that's how business works, right? Sometimes you pay more for a short-term investment as you would. Like, if they could get him for $18 million over 4 years, that's a no-brainer. That's not what he wants. He wants $23 million. And we said, all right, well, we won't give you $23 million. We can give you 18 over a long term, or we'll give you 21 for one. And that's what they decided to do, 21 for one. And I'm okay with that. I mean, he missed some significant time last year, but he's been fairly healthy throughout most of his career. Through his first 4 years, I think he's missed, 7 games, 8 games? Most of them were last year. But I don't know. I'm looking at the way that the NFL is currently trending, and that's all you can do. You can look at the way things trend, and you can hope that it stays on the same trajectory, and you can guide your team off of that. And the way that the NFL is trending is that every single draft, we are loaded with wide receiving talent. And if you look at the last 4 drafts, you look at the last 5 drafts, wide receivers taken in the first round have hit at a crazy high clip. A crazy high clip. T. Higgins is a phenomenal player. No one's discrediting what T. Higgins has been. But if you can get a guy in the draft for 5 years and you don't have to pay him $20 million, why would you not do that? Why would you not do that? Especially when you're handicapped, because you're going to have to pay Jamar Chase, and you already are paying Joe Burrow.
The part that I just don't quite understand, and you kind of explained it there with the short-term investment, but if you're already paying him X amount of dollars and you come back to the table with less amount of money for the following year or subsequent years, I have a hard time believing that you think that's going to go over well. You think that's a good conversation that he wants to have. And if that's what you're doing, if that's the plan. Now, Drew Garrison has said that the Bengals got up to $22 million, which to me is more believable. I think the Bengals probably wanted around the same number that he's getting paid at now.
Like I said.
Opposed to Kelsey Conway, respectfully, I'm going to say this with love, and I'm going to say this with respect. It doesn't make a lot of sense that the Bengals would pay him this amount of much of money this coming season, and then come back to the table, hey, T, we're going to pay you $5 million less, or whatever the number was. Because based on her article, it's the Bengals didn't come close to 20. That's what I read, at least from it. So if that's the case, then the Bengals organization should be, in my opinion, looked at negatively. But if that's not true, and the Bengals did meet up to the number that he is making this year, which I don't know the exact number, then we're talking about the same thing here. And the Bengals don't want to pay another wide receiver top dollar. I know the Eagles just did it, but I would tend to agree. I would tend to agree with Mr. Mo in our chat and with various other people. You can't do it. You can't pay 2 wide receivers that much money. It's gonna kill your team. Gonna kill your roster.
I don't think it would kill the roster. I think what it does is it makes you have to be perfect in the draft, which, you ask me, the Eagles are really, really good in the draft. So that's the difference, is they can draft with the best of the best, whereas the Bengals can't. So that being said, the article itself, right, if it's true, it looks bad on the Bengals. If not, then, I think we're all in agreement here that T. Higgins, I mean, it just wasn't going to make sense financially for the Bengals to pay him like a top 10 receiver. But that, I guess, more or less where I have my frustration with the team is the evaluation of T. Higgins. If he's not even a top 20, if this is true, if this article is true, if he's not even a top 20 receiver, and you don't value him in that way, like, you could have went out and got yourself a guy that could have made a difference with that money to go compete this year. And you're telling me it's conflicting reports, right? They're telling me that he's important for this Super Bowl run. We're going to franchise tag him. He's going to play here 2024.
You say that, but like, what do you mean when you say you like? Do you have an idea of what they could have done with that money? And you're saying just like resign DJ Reader, like what do you?
Well, there's different ways you can go.
I'll let Casey finish that thought when we come back after this on 1410 Wing AM. All right, welcome back into Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. T. Higgins conversation continues. Reed just asked a relatively eloquent question here to you, one Casey McAllister, about what is it exactly that you're looking to do with maybe some of the money that we're talking about here. But I'll let you kind of finish the thought here before we went to break.
Yeah, I mean there's a couple of different ways you could have went with it. Like you could have went with another edge rusher like Danielle Hunter. You could have easily gone best corner available. Like there's different players you could have picked up. I don't know the exact like how they would split up the money. Maybe they split it up into two players and you get Marquise Hollywood Brown and DJ Reader, and that to me is way better than keeping T. Higgins for 1 year.
Yeah, perhaps.
So like there's different ways you could go about it. I just think with the money that they could have saved, you could have bettered your team long term, right? It's conflicting because they're all in, but they're not. That's why I'm upset.
This is what I'm gonna say about the Cincinnati Bengals, and this is all the news that has come out about our beloved Houdays, our fighting Zach Taylors, our fighting Paycor Stadiums, is that it seemed like this entire offseason, everyone wants to be mad at something for one reason or another, and maybe that's rightfully so. Maybe you strongly disagree with their draft, the guys that they've signed in the offseason, and that's okay. But it is also noticed to me that it is coming off the first year in this current 3-year run where the Bengals haven't made the postseason, and maybe it's just disgruntled. Because I know this. This is how I operate my life in general. Is listen, I'm not going to worry about problems till they present themselves to me, and then once it comes, I'll cross that bridge when we get there, as you have heard that saying before. So I'm not going to get worked up about the Cincinnati Bengals every step along that way, until it shows to me that they are no longer a team that can compete with the best of the best. And to be honest, that's all I've seen for the past 3 years, is that when this team is on the field, they compete with the best of the best. When Joe Burrow's out and healthy, this team competes with the best of the best. So until I see a Cincinnati Bengals team with a healthy Joe Burrow go 7-10, 6-11, 8-9, whatever it is, to where they're no longer competing at a high level, I'm not going to get worked up about it. I'm not going to get worked up about it until I see what's precipitating, because I guess I'm just putting faith into that blonde guy that I always talk about and this ownership group that has hit on more than they have missed. And I don't know. I get negative connotations always coming from Cincinnati Bengals fans on X.com. We're doing this wrong. We're doing this wrong. We're doing this wrong. And I think people in general just complain more than they are positive. And I guess that's where that's where you lose me. That's where I'm not going to worry about it until it presents itself, until there is problems before my eyes.
Now let me be clear here. I'm not. First off, I don't know if I necessarily believe this report, but it's good sports talk because people are talking about this.
Yeah, the one thing
it feels like we don't believe it, but we're going to talk about it.
They're claiming that this is all true, that these are all reported numbers from some source.
Casey, the one thing the Enquirer does really good,
yeah,
they get clicks, baby.
Oh,
They'll make you click on their articles.
Yeah. Yeah.
They just won't get you to pay.
No.
As soon as I get to that paywall every time, it's a quick exit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to be clear, Reed, I'm not necessarily believing the article, but if this was all true, I think there is some reasons to be upset a little bit because, like I said, it's conflicting messages that they're sending across their fans. They say they're all in, but they're not really because they're franchise tagging a guy that's not even top 20 in the NFL.
Don't you think though that if they believe that he's top 20 in the NFL, but they're just concerned about his health, they're concerned about him being on the field and available, and the one thing that T. Higgins maybe want that they're not going to oblige by is a guaranteed contract.
Right.
That's the part where the Bengals are like, you know what, we believe in you. We actually do think that you're one of the top 20 guys in the NFL. And if you told the Bengals on the forefront that, hey, this guy's going to actually play every game, and by every game, you get the point. He's going to play. He's going to be out there more times than not. He's going to be out there when it means the most. I think the Bengals would give him what he wants. The Bengals would give him a guaranteed contract. The problem is that they don't know that, and he has shown, if there is any weakness, if you want to call it, of T. Higgins, it's that he's not always out there. But when he is out there, you give him his flowers, you give him his credit. He's one of the better wide receivers in the NFL. But you get into this crux of the debate of what actually are the Bengals willing to take on from a risk perspective, and I think they value the risk of losing either the picks or they lose the ability of basically letting him walk, as you said, for the opportunity to save money. They feel like the value of the risk of just having him in general for one more year. They know what they have. They're going to keep him for one more year. And you know what? If they win a Super Bowl, again, as I said before, no one's going to care if they didn't get draft picks. No one's going to care if they lost value on T. Higgins.
Right.
They're going to be happy that they had T. Higgins when it meant the most, and they have a chance to win a Super Bowl. Now, having said that, it's very easily said that if it doesn't work out and
Correct.
T. Higgins unfortunately either gets hurt or maybe he has a great year and you don't get over the proverbial hump, you're going to find yourself in a position where we've walked back to where you're at, which is, hey, you had this guy, you could have leveraged him to be able to help the future, but instead you kind of played halfway in, halfway out. So I think all in all, you can rationalize all sides of this story. I don't know if there's one way that you could argue, though, that one side of the aisle is being overly ridiculous versus the other. T. Higgins is trying to get as much value out of his basically football life as he can. Yeah. But it comes down to guaranteed money, and the Bengals obviously don't love guaranteed money. I think it's pretty safe to say at this point that they're one of the teams, if you ranked all 32 teams in the NFL, I don't want to say they're dead last, but they're at the lower of the list of offering guaranteed money outside of clearly Joe Burrow. He's an exception to the rule.
They've always paid their quarterback. Like that's you're right. You're right about the positions that get hurt regularly. And I know Joe gets hurt, but like they've always paid their quarterback. They paid Andy Dalton. They were willing to pay Carson Palmer. All those things are good and dandy. But yeah, like Trey said, if we're 6 weeks into the season, the Bengals are 2-4. Yeah, everything that everyone was complaining about this entire offseason, they're all right. But if on the vice versa, if you're 4-2, we're dealing with a whole different set of things, right? We're not even talking about what we were talking about last April.
How good is T. Higgins too? Like, it's fair to say, like, again, he's pretty damn good. So I'm not going to say
he's a 1,000-yard receiver.
But my point is like he does play on a very, very formidable offense. Right. Like you stick him in Tampa Bay, or you stick him, I don't know, you throw him to
New England.
To New England. Might as well throw him to the pit of misery while we're at it. Let's just put him up in New England. Hell, have a tea party while he's at it. But my point is, if you did put him there, what does that production ultimately look like? I don't, it's a team game. We all know it's a team game. But we sit here and argue whether he's top 20 in the NFL, is he top 10 in the NFL, this, that, and the other. Like, I think that there's tiers more so than top 20. Like, there's a clear difference between Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, right? And then another crop down of your T. Higgins, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What tier does he fall underneath? And I think it's fair to say he falls underneath the tier that he deserves the money he's asking for. The only crux of the problem is how much is he worth guaranteed? Because if he can't stay on the field, then that's where the Bengals are like, you're not worth it. I hate to be that man, or I hate to be that brash about it. But T. Higgins, if you're only going to play 8 games, you're nowhere worth the amount of money that you're asking for, and you want me to guarantee it. Why don't you just play? And if you're available and healthy, then guess what? You'll get the money that you want.
Well, yeah, if you want to take it that way, right? If you want to take it from a Bengals perspective, then if he's not even going to be healthy, he's had plenty of injuries. He's never played through a full season, I don't think. I think he's been hurt at least a couple games every season. And last year,
he's played 14, 14, 14, and 11.
Yeah, so he's missed at least 3 games every year.
6 last.
14's pretty good though, guys.
Correct.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
If that's what you're get for $22 million, then fine. But my opinion is, I think you could have easily gotten value for T, which we're past that point now. You could have gotten value for T for a second rounder and then double dipped up receiver in a receiver heavy class. And then one of those guys is probably going to hit. So just based off of what you've said, the hit rate here as of late has been fantastic.
Correct.
So for me, it's like, are you really going to be truly all in, or are you like gonna start providing like? Are you going to start doing stuff for the future, which is what they did with Amarius? Like the whole offseason has been 1 foot in, 1 foot out to me, and that's where the
you see Mims. Just to be clear, you see Mims as like a future guy. Like that's what you view that as.
I certainly hope he's not. I certainly hope he comes in.
But
day
I think
one.
I guess my question more or less is like, do you think that that's what your perception is of what the Bengals were doing with that pick? Like you perceptually think, okay, they're more or less drafting for the future than they are right now, or do you? Where would you say if you had to put them on one side of the other? Where would you put that at?
Well, just from what they've said, they would never get a prospect like him ever again because they wouldn't be that far down the list. So that makes it feel like that's a pick for the future. Like we got to get this guy because we know we're not going to get that sort of level of talent next year.
And he's not going to be asked to start right away. So
right,
it is a future pick.
So it is a future pick, and
I'm okay with that.
But the thing is, I think he might be good enough to take that spot, to be honest with you.
That'd be great.
That's what I'm hoping for, so that he provides you that value. But like the whole draft was basically around guys that – there's only 2 guys that we know for sure are going to have significant snaps, and that's Chris Jenkins and Jermaine Burton. The other guys are all –
There wasn't a whole lot of holes on this team, though.
I know, but like Eric All is a guy that you picked there, and you could have had your next future running back there, whatever.
It's easy for the Panthers to draft guys that have an immediate impact. It's tough for the Chiefs. It's tough for the Bengals, who have 21 of 22 starters. Like I saw a tweet from Joe Goodberry, who's – listen. He knows more about Cincinnati Bengals football than he's forgotten more than I'll ever learn about it. But he put out a tweet like the Bengals need to get 6 starters out of this draft or 5 starters out of this draft. And I was like, and he brought up in 2008, something like that, the Bengals hit on 5 starters. Like in 2007, the Bengals were like 4-12. Like it's easy to find 5 starters when your team's not very good. And yeah, they were all pretty successful players. But like, yeah, it's just – I get it, right? You can lengthen your window when you already have guys to fill the holes. When you already have guys, you already feel like you have a roster that can compete at a very high level right now. Why not? Like you don't need to fill it up with just guys that can. Hey, this could add some depth here. Let's get guys that maybe could boom later in their career. I'm okay with that. And by the way, I was just looking it up. We're talking about T. Higgins as like a top 20 thing. I know we like to put easy, like, this guy's a top 10 quarterback. This guy's a top 20 wide receiver. You could pretty easily make the case that T. Higgins isn't. And I love T. Higgins. He's been a phenomenal wide receiver. You can easily make the case that he is a top 20. You could very easily select 20 to 30 guys that you could argue like these guys are better than T.
That would be my point then. If you could make that argument, why even give him the franchise tag?
Because he's here, right? Because you get $21 million.
You could find another guy. Like if you're gonna have 30 other guys ahead of him, I'm sure you can find a guy that will be here long term that you could sign, like Marquise Hollywood Brown or whoever, or double dip in the draft.
The Bengals view him as a top 20 guy. I think there's no doubt in my mind. He's been in the building. They value T. Higgins. The problem ultimately lies that you think that the Bengals, based off of what they've shown, is less of them value. You think that maybe they don't value him as a top 20 guy. I'm going to make again, it's my opinion, I guess, for a certain, you can't guarantee this, but there's no doubt in my mind the Bengals think he's a top 20 receiver. The issue ultimately lies into what goes into that specific contract, like I just said before. I don't think it comes down to like, oh, the Bengals are like, we're not going to offer this. We're not going to give you this contract because we don't think you're one of the best 30 guys. We can go find somebody better. They're using the franchise tag to their advantage of saying, you know what? It kind of stinks, but we'd rather take the risk on the front end of keeping him and having him here for one more year than whatever draft picks or whatever other value proposition you can give me on the backside of it, because we know what we have coming back. And the last thing I'm going to say here, we'll finish this conversation on the backside of this break on 1410 Wing AM, is this. Amarius Mims, I would like to think that they drafted him for a very specific reason, and it wasn't for the future. That and more on 1410 when we come back. All right, we are off the radio, just to be clear. Off the radio. We have our own ads that we need to do. And I know the chat, they like to get on us from time to time. We're 15 minutes late. They're not happy about it. They want our ads to be read. And you know what? We want our ads to be read. So shout out to United Dairy Farmers. Shout out to Encore and Pawnee. We'll get to those guys in a second. But anything that we need to add here before we get to the Supers that is not good sports talk radio? No? Yeah? No?
I got nothing.
All right. Casey, the Bengals report.
Yeah, the Bengals report is brought to you by Encore Technologies. Encore Technologies provides IT solutions for a data-centered world with a suite of services from mobile computing to desktop to data center, supporting both centralized and work-from-home computing modules to improve efficiency and
Productivity.
That's right, productivity. Visit encore.tech. The path to innovation begins here.
Where?
Begins right here.
Oh.
That's right. And let me tell you about this lovely bottle of water made right here in Hamilton, Ohio. Pawnee Water. Uses natural limestone filtration, unlike the artificial processing that other brands use. The result is a healthy alkaline water, and some say the best tasting water in the world. Visit Pawnee Water at PAHHNIwater.com so you can buy this great tasting water.
A lot of slander in the chat today. A lot of toxicity in there, which is fine. I like toxic every so often, but mouse cops all over you, Casey. I'm going to defend you for just a second. I think that Casey's doing nothing more than trying to extend an olive branch to a team in this city that doesn't get a whole lot of coverage. He's trying to fight for the right, but the truth is that he's a busy guy. He's a busy guy. He doesn't have all day to watch FC every single day. You know what? He loves the Cincinnati Bengals. That's where his heart lies.
Listen,
but you know what?
hang on.
He has a significant other that played soccer. So he's like me. Kind of got dragged into this. Now you're doing your best to make not only your wife proud, but maybe your family proud because they're FC folks. And you're like, you know what? I can't go into work every day as I can't talk here. I can't go into work every day and then just let these guys slander soccer. So I'm going to stick up for soccer. But if you're going to ask me weeds questions and throw me under the bus here, then that's just what's going to happen. So I'm going to stick up for Casey and saying you don't need to know everything about soccer. But having said that, you can just say, hey, guys, I think you're sleeping on him. We could get some more, we can get Laurel. I have Laurel. Laurel, for those that are wondering, Laurel, I think she's big time now. Is that right?
Sure.
But 5 years ago when we first started Chatterbox and first started the Hamiltonian, shout out the magazine, Laurel would write for us, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah, you didn't know that.
I did not know that. That's pretty
So
cool.
I have Laurel. I could text Laurel right now.
Please.
Maybe she'll come on the show.
I'd love that.
But here's the problem: is that with all due respect, do people want to hear about FC Cincinnati, Casey? You think they do?
I think they do. And listen, guys, if I didn't bring it up, it would never be brought up on the show, period. Elliot had no clue that the FC had brought in this guy until I told him, literally like 10 minutes before the show started. So if I don't do that, then it never gets covered, and then it just looks like we're ignoring them on purpose. I only want to just break the news or talk about it a little bit. I don't need to go in depth on it because I'm not the expert. We call in people that are the experts.
That's right.
Yeah.
So maybe we can. I'll reach out. I don't know. I don't know if she has the time or the availability to come on the show. But the problem, really, what would lie would be the fact that she would be talking to a bunch of when we talk about novices. I'm looking around the room here. And I mean, Casey's just doing it again. To be very clear, he's trying to be nice to his family. But if you ask me, especially Elliot, or read anything about FC Cincinnati, we're lost. You guys can act like you're not. Go ahead. You gonna act like you're not?
Reed. Celentano's great, dude. Don't you? Reed and I were talking about Celentano yesterday.
Dude, we sat in this room and we discussed the roster build of FCC. And how, just based on how beautiful TQL Stadium is, how we're just going to continue to get guys coming in here that want to play for FC Cincinnati.
We can't get Brandon Vasquez, but we can recreate him.
You couldn't even tell me what FCC
We can recreate Brandon Vasquez.
I can tell you exactly what FCC stands for.
What is it?
Football Club Cincinnati.
Said so eloquently.
We can't. Here's the thing about Brandon Vasquez. We can't get him back. He's gone. He's lost. But we can recreate him. It's about getting on base. If he gets on base, that's all that matters. Casey. Take it away, Casey.
This is ridiculous. I'm not going to stand for
preposterous.
this.
I'm not going to stand for it
so
either.
much slander.
I'm not going to stand for it either.
What do you want from me, chat? What do you want from me? I'm not the expert here. I would love to be an expert and put these guys in their place, but I'm not.
I want you to.
I'm not, though. I'm not. I will admit it. I will admit it. I'm not.
Why are we bullying Casey all the time?
I don't understand.
I don't do it. Trace does it.
You both do it. You both do it.
I don't like
No. Hey. Stop pointing fingers. Thumb guys.
I just
Thumb guys. You
defended
guys
Casey.
both. You're defending him now because you know that you throw him under. You throw him under the bus.
If I had 3 fingers, I'd point the third one at Casey.
Let's let Casey decide.
Because it's
When
not
have I
my
ever said
fault.
anything about
It's all
Casey?
your fault.
When
If
have I
you
ever
come
said
in here
anything about
firing
Casey?
Ricochet,
I'm a
you
thumb guy.
told me yesterday FCC stinks, and anybody who talks about it stinks. That's what you
Thumb
said.
guy. Thumb guy.
Casey,
What?
do you have anything to add before we go back on the radio?
No, I don't have a single thing to add. I said my piece. We'll get on experts that know how to talk FC.
It's about getting
that?
on base. Doesn't care if you get a hit or a walk.
Well, you
I'll
shut
do
up
I'll
and
do
just
mouse
do the
cop. I'll do
countdown.
mouse cop right. You tell me who to bring on this show, and I'll get them on. How about that, mouse cop?
You're gonna have to ask them the questions, though.
Sure. Why not?
All right, welcome back into Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Trace Fowler, Elliott Rearing, Casey McAllister, Reed Mouse in here, chopping it up. Got to FC talk a little earlier in the show. Now we're on to another football.
Oh.
Turns out American football. We'll stick to this conversation around T. Higgins. I had mentioned before the break that Amarius Mims, I don't look at that as a project. I think you have a guy that got drafted 18th overall in the NFL draft. You can't convince me that there's that many guys that get drafted in the first round that is not a quarterback that you reach on that wouldn't get some semblance of an opportunity this year to play. If you think for a single second that everybody on the offensive line, by everybody I mean the 2 corner pieces between the Browns, are going to stay healthy all year long, I just can't get behind that. And that doesn't mean that I'm trying to be negative. It just means that I think that's being naive to think that it'd be like going into a Major League Baseball season and thinking every single starter on your roster is going to pitch every single game. It's just not going to happen. Now, could it happen? Someone's going to point back to what year was it? I think 2012 Reds when it actually did happen. Maybe there's an exception to every rule. But Trent Brown's a guy. What's the over under? What's the over under on him starting?
On him starting?
Oh, Trent Brown's going to start.
Trent Brown will probably start.
How many games do you think?
Oh,
if I said right now you got to wager $100 of your own money and over under, you have to take the bets. What's your over under on him starting NFL games this year?
11.5.
Okay, so there's my point. You have a first-round pick that's going to have to make an impact immediately.
Well, I mean, we make fun of, we know that Amarius Mims is going to play this year. He's going to get opportunities to play, but we laugh at the Bengals last year not playing Miles Murphy. Miles Murphy played in all 17 games. Dax Hill played in all 17 games 2 years ago, and we're like, these guys aren't getting opportunities to play.
Well, you got to look at snap counts. Just because you go in there for 2 plays, I don't know if that could be like that. I wouldn't be bragging about, oh, look, he
Mims
played in a game where he
game.
played 2 snaps. Miles Murphy got in the fourth quarter against some random game that was already a 17-point game. Decided he was going to take 5 snaps, and we're going to say that he played in the game.
Miles Murphy played an average of 23 to 24 snaps a game, so that's half of the defensive plays.
So he played in 23 snaps a game
On
you're saying?
average.
All right. How many snaps does Hendrickson get? Just to put that in perspective.
I mean, a team gets what, 60 plays, 70 plays, 60 plays? Like you're playing.
Yeah.
He's playing a third of the time.
Well, I would just compare it directly to Hendrickson, and then we can get a really good idea. And I mean, Hendrickson was hurt, right, for at least a game or 2.
Well,
All right, give me a second.
The difference between the Bengals and other teams though is they hardly substitute out their starting.
Trey Hendrickson played
guys,
an average of 40 snaps a game.
Yeah.
So he played half of what Trey Hendrickson played.
Right.
But I mean, I agree with you in the sense that Mims will get playing time. Some valuable playing time. I'm not going to predict injuries. Like I don't want Trent Brown to get hurt. Like I don't want Orlando Brown to get hurt. I would rather
Mims just
them have the plan in place to where he has that time to develop and just sits behind them and learns. Like I don't want him to be thrusted out there when he's not ready. Not saying he's not ready. I certainly hope he comes in day one and just blows the doors off everyone and just looks like the best offensive lineman we have. But as at this moment, we don't have that intel. We don't have that knowledge that he is going to do so. So as of right now, the only speculation that we can have is that he's going to sit behind Trent Brown. I'm not going to predict any injuries. And if that's the case, if Trent Brown doesn't get hurt, he's going to be sitting behind Trent Brown all season. So, and I'm sure they'll probably play him in jumbo sets. Like, he's athletic enough to, like, do the jumbo tight end packages where you're trying to run the ball, like, on the goal line. Like, I'm sure he'll be in on those.
Right. Here's the thing. Like, we know that Mims is going to play. That's not what we're talking about. Like, these things can be, like, both true. Like, Mims is definitely a pick that you're planning for the future. But he is going to get chances to play.
Well,
right
isn't
now.
every pick planning for the future? I mean, you could sit here and say that every pick you make is like,
No,
well, that's part of the future. They're going to be there for 4 or 5 years.
Well, sometimes you fill a hole.
And don't you think that's what they kind of did? Like, that's where I'm going with this, is that you guys are sitting here suggesting to me that, they took an offensive tackle by whim. I think that they had a glaring issue on the offensive line, that they have a guy that's played half the games in 6 years. I don't even know what it is. Like, we're sitting here, we're acting like Trent Brown is some kind of guy that we can rely on. I don't think you can rely on him as far as you can throw him. Like, genuinely. I'm not trying to be a hater. I'm just saying that's the facts of life. So you draft a guy that you think could possibly be either his replacement and or be a more than serviceable person at that position starting day one. And I'm not saying that's a negative. I'm just saying that I think they drafted to need round one versus taking best player available. I don't like. They can sit here and convince me whatever they want. You guys said they reached for McKinley because of a need in the third round. I think, and I'm not saying they reached. I'm saying they took an offensive tackle specifically because that's what they wanted. I think they were going to take offensive tackle at this point regardless. They started coming off the board. Those offensive tackles started coming off the board quick, and they were like, "We got it. We got to take him." There's no other options.
That's the whole thing. Like, you're taking a guy because you're tired of the revolving door at right tackle, which is what I said before the draft. I said I'm tired of we had Riley Reif in 2021. We had Lael Collins in 2022. We had Jonah Williams last year. This year we have a starter in Trent Brown. I want someone that's going to be here for a long time, and that's a future pick. And no, not all picks are projecting for the future. Right, the Bengals very much took a high-risk guy that's had a lot of injuries, that doesn't have a lot of tape, that hasn't played a whole lot of games in college football, which is important, which is incredibly important. Hasn't played a whole lot of games at a high level, and now we're asking him to play in the National Football League. So they recognize this, and they're saying, "Hey, this guy's so talented, he's so big, he's so gifted that we want this guy to be our right tackle going forward." And that's what they built. It's certainly a future pick, not necessarily a "Hey, this is going to affect us right now" thing.
I guess I just disagree. I look at the Bengals and I think to myself that you're going to find yourself in a position again where you're asking yourself, how are we in the same predicament year in and year out because we have a guy that goes down at one of the tackle positions and now we don't have a replacement that's serviceable enough to help us win a Super Bowl. They decided, you know what, this year we're going to take round one, best available offensive tackle, and we're going to take it because ultimately we want some depth there and we don't want to feel like we're in another position like we were in years prior. And I think that, again, I'm not suggesting he can't develop. I'm not suggesting that if it goes perfectly, he won't sit behind Trent Brown all year. I think that's very much the case. But I think behind closed doors, if you ask the Bengals, hey, what do you expect out of Mims this year? I think in their mind, in their heart of hearts, it's like we needed him because we're expected at some point that he's going to have to be a big part of this year. And that, to me, isn't...
That would be fantastic. That'd be fantastic.
But I'm thinking that's essentially what it's going to be.
But expecting a guy that's played 8 games... or whatever it was, 8-10 games of college football, and expecting him to just waltz into the room, waltz into the NFL, and play the second hardest position to learn in the sport right away seems like wishful thinking, and that's okay. They want him to go into this. But if he does that, that's fantastic. And yeah, that's part of the thing. He's going to have to play on the fly. He's going to have to learn on the fly, but it very much is a future thing.
As of this second, the Bengals' plan is for him to not start.
Correct.
And it's to learn behind those two guys. That is their plan.
It's the second hardest position in the sport to learn. And more often than not, it's very rare that tackles walk into the NFL. Guys that have played 40 games in college, it's very rare that they walk in and are immediately great.
The thing about The thing about Mims is the same concept, though, about DeJuan Jones, is that, you know what?
He's so big and so talented. Yeah, you're right.
I'm just saying, not even talented. We don't need to go down the talented road. At some point, you're just so damn big. How much, again, you could become a little more polished, yes. You could become more wise in your years. There's no doubt that you develop as you grow, and you become a better football player because of it.
Right.
But at some point, it's like you took this guy with the 18th pick. I think setting the expectations is fine. At some point, who cares what you actually ultimately believe he should or shouldn't be? I just think behind closed doors, again, as a very clear difference of opinion, I would like to think that you're with your 18th overall pick in a year in which you decided going all in is not the right word to use, but in a year in which you decided you're going to franchise tag T. Higgins because you think you have a chance to win a Super Bowl, I have a hard time believing that you're just going to forfeit, and not forfeit is maybe the wrong word here, but you're going to take the 18th pick with the concept of thinking, you know what, he's definitely not ready this year. I would venture to say just because he's played in 8 games means little to nothing from the standpoint of I don't think it means anything, Reed. I think the guy plays a significant amount of snaps in practice. There's so much hype around how many games you play in versus what you actually do every single day in practice. If you practice, let's just call it 80% and again, people are going to think I'm being a homer. I'm not trying to be a homer. I'm just saying if you practice 80% of the time at the University of Georgia, you're getting reps every single day against elite level talent. And you're that big, I have a hard time believing that you're just a project guy and you're going to throw, essentially he's not. Maybe I'm wrong. I would venture to say that Mims is going to get himself in a position where he'll play more than Trent Brown this year because of either injury and or because at some point he'll be just as good.
If he rolls out there and is better than Trent Brown, that's amazing. That's fantastic. I'm just saying that in a position that's the second hardest to learn in the NFL. That's the second hardest to learn in the sport, to ask a guy that hasn't played a whole lot of meaningful snaps at college football. And you can act like it doesn't matter. I think it very much does matter. And I think history has shown that it matters, that you need snaps to play. You need snaps to learn how to play the game. We can do things. You can hit BP all day, but live BP, like you can even hit live BP. But until you're in the game, you don't know how well you can hit.
I think that's a horrible analogy because what you're suggesting is that the difference between playing against, let's just say, for instance, this guy played at North Dakota. He was a big monster playing at North Dakota, and he played against, whoever North Dakota has on the defensive line every single day in practice. And then on top of that, he played an FCS schedule. You think that would be a better situation of him playing 30, 40 games in college than to practice against who he's practiced against, and then on top of that, played in national championship games of the such? Like, I would venture to say that I'd rather have that guy than the guy that's played 40 games at some FCS school. Now, to be fair, maybe he wouldn't have gotten drafted in the first round at FCS school, but I think he got drafted more or less off of his size.
Correct.
Because you can't teach what he has. Period.
Correct.
Orlando Brown spoke on it yesterday. I sent it over to Casey. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good because I do think Trace is somewhat right. When you're practicing every day against, he was practicing against NFL talent every single day.
Travon Walker, first round pick.
Yes, the 8-game thing is concerning, but I
Nolan Smith, first round pick.
Trayvon
Walker was the number 1 pick in the draft.
We'll get to it. I just want to be very clear. Like, if he plays and it comes out, rolls on out, that's absolutely amazing. I just think that it seems a little naive to expect a guy to pick this position up right off the rip.
That's fair.
Only playing 8 games with injuries. Well, he's talented. He's big. All these things. Great. I'm glad that we have him. Like, I want a big guy. I want a guy that's very athletic. I want a guy that's very talented. But to expect him to go right out in the NFL and have a high success, be successful from the get-go when you only played 8 live-action games seems a little bit wishful thinking. And I don't think that's a stretch.
I don't think it's wishful thinking that Trent Brown's going to be there all year. I think that is absurdly wishful thinking.
I've never said that I think Trent Brown's
But you're suggesting, but my point is that the notion in the room, the notion in the room is that you drafted this guy to sit behind a guy. He's going to learn the craft. And it's like he's sitting behind a guy that never plays. So they drafted a position specifically for the idea that we're probably going to need a guy here. Let's draft somebody that we think can fill that whole day one and help us win a Super Bowl.
Well,
is that crazy?
Trent Brown that's never played in his 8-year career has played 1 season where he's played less games than DeJuan Jones played his entire collegiate career. Like, he's played at least 9 games every year but 1. Yes, we know that Trent Brown. We know that there's going to be an injury. We know that there's going to be an injury at some point on the line. That's why you draft the depth. No one's saying that Trent Brown's going to start for 17 games. Yep. I'm just saying that. I'm breaking barriers by saying Amarius Mims is a future project, and he's part of the future, the long-term plans, and that's what the Bengals drafted him for. They want him to be the right tackle of the future.
Jermaine Burton's not a part of the future. Jenkins isn't part of the future. What player do you draft that isn't part of the future outside of like the top 3 rounds? That's my point. It's like we're sitting here acting like he's a project that he's not going to play.
Sometimes you ask a guy to start right away. And I'm saying that's not what they're going to ask Amarius Mims. If he wins the spot outright, that's great, but he's not going to be asked to do that.
Let's be very clear here. It would be a bad scenario for the Bengals if they did lose Trent Brown because they don't have depth anymore there. So you don't want him to get hurt. You want Trent Brown to play. You don't want him to be put on injured reserve or something early on in the season and Amarius Mims take over that spot as a rookie, especially in the AFC North. He needs time. He needs time to get adapted to NFL speeds. Whether you like that answer or not, Travion Walker has not been very good in the NFL. He's been okay. He's been like Sam Hubbard. He's not gone up against Myles Garrett and T.J. Watt. So that's my one argument to this whole debate here is, he probably is going to need a little time to adapt. Now, I hope it certainly is very quickly because I am worried that if Trent Brown goes down, what does that look like, right? So, to me, it is.
I just want a clear answer for the Bengals fans. Just a clear answer.
Yeah.
Because those are getting on me like I'm arguing nothing. What I'm suggesting is that you don't take your 18th pick as a project when you have a chance to win the Super Bowl the very following year.
What they did.
Just don't do it.
That's what they did.
Don't do
That's
it.
exactly
and you
what
think
they
that's what they did? I'm saying they didn't do that. I'm saying they decided, you know what? We have a position of need. We got a guy playing right tackle that plays half the games. We went out last minute and tried to fill a hole. We don't believe that we filled the hole. We don't believe we filled the hole. You guys can buy the Kool-Aid on Trent Brown if you want. Down at Paul Brown Stadium, they'll never admit it. I don't think they believe for a single second they filled the hole. They know they still have a hole there. And they decide, you know what? We got to find somebody we think that might be good enough immediately to fill that hole. We're going to go out and get a guy. It's a risk. But he's got the size, he's played against the talent, and we got a chance to put him in there day one. And if you don't think that's the case, that's fine. We can fundamentally disagree. But my point is to sit here and act like they're just going to take a project guy that, he's not going to be, we'll see what happens hopefully maybe in 2 or 3 years. I don't believe that's the case.
Trace, if that's the case, then he would start day one. Right. That's what you're hoping for then, right?
What I am suggesting is that they know if he's not able to start day one, maybe he's just slightly behind Trent Brown. Regardless, it still proves my point that if Trent Brown gets hurt, which he inevitably probably will, they have a replacement there that's ready to go. They're not going to take best player available at 18. That's what I'm suggesting.
As a developmental backup?
What's that?
As a developmental backup because he needs to learn under Trent Brown so he can get to his level. That's a future pick. That's a project.
Correct.
That's a future. You're molding the guy to NFL speed.
What fundamentally part of this are we not picking up around here?
That's what we're trying to figure out.
What I'm suggesting is that I don't think they drafted him. Quite honestly, you can sugarcoat it if you want that this guy's a big developmental project and he's going to sit behind a guy. What I'm suggesting is that they drafted a player in which they thought they were going to need year one at some point. They might not admit that. They're not going to come out and say, hey, Trent Brown, he's as reliable as basically a $5 folding chair. But essentially, that's what he is. I guess I'm crazy for thinking they took the 18th pick and it's not a project. Maybe I'm crazy for thinking that. Maybe you guys are all right. Maybe Trent Brown's going to show him the ropes the whole entire year and it's going to work out perfectly fine. Am I crazy for thinking that's what they decided they ultimately want to do? No, I'm asking. This is open ask. You can answer that I'll give you some time to think about it. You can answer it right after this on 1410 Wing AM.
That was it.
Yeah, do like an outro for Kev.
Well, I mean, at some point it would be nice if in here I could get an idea of, when it turns out the folding paper that you throw up here on the thing just doesn't work.
That was a 6.
All right. Well, we'll do it after the show.
All right. Hey.
No, I mean, like you guys can sit here and act like things are awkward. I don't care. I genuinely want to get to the bottom of this. Okay. So let's just be clear.
Yeah.
He's a project pick.
So
he's not. To be clear, he's a project pick. He's not starting day one. He's not starting day one at all.
If he starts day one, that's incredible. I mean, that'd be
we don't
fantastic.
expect it.
I don't think that's the expectation for us, and I don't think that's the expectation for Cincinnati Bengals.
That's what we're coming.
Do you think the Bengals? Do you think the Bengals drafted him with the concept that he's going to play this year?
I think yes. I think that there is an idea that the Cincinnati Bengals he will play, and that's just the nature of the game. People get hurt.
But that's not what they're hoping for either, though.
Right.
That is insurance.
You guys act like they took the 18th pick. This is where I get frustrated. Like there's not a need there. Like there's just like that spot is taken care of. No problem. We got right tackle this year completely figured out. You get what I'm saying?
I mean, I think I understand what you're saying, but I don't think that's what we're saying either. We expect there to be an injury.
I just don't think it's.
But we don't think that that's what the Bengals are hoping for or expecting either.
You don't hope for guys to get injured, Casey.
Yeah,
but you realize that it's probably going to happen.
You're acting like the Cincinnati Bengals are expecting this or Amarius Mims to be Joe Alt to show up day one, start, and be the future guy for 5 years to come.
No, I expect them to think that he's a serviceable replacement for the guy that's ultimately going to get hurt in Trent Brown.
Correct, yeah. And that sounds like a guy that's going to take some time to develop, and that you hope is to a starter / Pro Bowl guy in the future. That sounds like a project.
Hang on,
I don't know what we're doing here.
So let's say right now he was better than Trent Brown. He would start over Trent Brown. But in your scenario, he's not better than Trent Brown, so you need to sit back, learn the game, the speed behind Trent Brown, right, to develop. And what you're trying to say is that by the time Trent Brown gets hurt, that he'll be ready? Is that what you're trying to allude to?
He's not going to be that far behind Trent Brown from the very beginning, and that's why they took him in the first place. They didn't take him because he's a huge project. You don't take first-round picks at 18 as huge projects. Like, this guy is going to take 2 years to figure out the position.
So
you don't do that. You don't draft a guy that big. That's been again a blue chip prospect since he was 15 years old.
Correct.
And the reality is he could step in there day one and be the best tackle in the entire draft. You don't take a guy at 18 just as like, you know what, we really hope to God and pray that Trent Brown doesn't get hurt because we got a project behind him.
Okay.
He's not that big of a project, guys.
Yeah, so
he's not.
So what he's basically trying to say is that he's not that far behind Trent Brown and that he can go above and beyond Trent Brown if he were to develop. So I get where you're coming from. I understand. If Trent Brown goes down, you feel pretty good about that spot now because you got a guy that's not that far behind Trent Brown. What we're, I guess, all agreeing to the point is that he could be one of the best NFL tackles if he did develop, right? That's what you're alluding to.
Yeah, but you don't have one of the best NFL tackles at right tackle now. So what's it matter what he could be in 4 years? I think
the whole point of your argument, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because us in the chat, us in the room, we're trying to figure out what you're trying to say here. I think you're operating like the Cincinnati Bengals thought that taking Mims wasn't going to be some sort of a project. And I think that is just objectively incorrect with a guy that has played 8 games, 400 snaps, whatever it is in college. He's huge. He's got all the traits. He's doing all this stuff. But that's the whole point of project is like, hey, this guy's going to have to learn how to play the position at the highest level over the next I think your whole thing is the Bengals took this guy as like he's surefire. He doesn't need to learn the ropes or anything like that. He's ready to roll. And we're saying no, that's clearly what the Bengals did because he's only played 400 snaps.
What players don't come in and learn the ropes in the NFL? At some point, we're arguing about semantics that exist regardless. All I'm trying to say is
that Michael Penix playing behind Kirk Cousins is a different scenario than Jaden Daniels starting day one in Washington
And I alluded
Commanders.
to the fact that maybe the only position you could convince me that there is actually development is quarterback.
Well, I'm telling you that
sizable difference between quarterback and tackles.
Tackles are similar in that they take years to develop. They
like
take
DeJuan
time.
Jones.
I mean, DeJuan Jones played well this year.
And why is that?
Just because you pick one. Well, who's the Giants tackle that was the worst tackle in the league his rookie year, and then year 2 was a Pro Bowler. He was a first-round pick. He was the PFF.
Thomas.
What?
That's Thomas. My bad.
Yeah, this guy took it. His first year, he's graded the worst PFF tackle in the league, and then year 2 he turns into a Pro Bowler. Sometimes it takes time to develop. Penei Sewell is an exception to the rule where he was great pretty much from the get-go. And we kind of knew that. And Joe Alt might be like that. That's what they anticipate from guys like Joe Alt, that they'll show up and they know the position because, hey, he played a lot of snaps. Because he has all the traits. Like, all these things are true, but they know when they draft Amarius Mims. Like, I think the Bengals knew that they were getting somewhat of a project with this guy.
Well, he wouldn't have gone 18th pick if he was a perfect player, certainly. But what was he, the 6th offensive tackle taken?
I don't know.
I think he was the 5th.
5th offensive tackle taken? So clearly there's people that have somewhat of a concern about the things that you're mentioning. I'm suggesting the Bengals drafted him, simply put, as somebody that they believe if Trent Brown goes down, there's not going to be a huge drop-off there. And they're going to take the risk on taking him there. If Brock Bowers was available at 18, do you think they take Brock Bowers over an offensive tackle when all the offensive tackles are off the board?
No, it was pretty clear that they were going to take a tackle. All the reports came out for weeks that they were probably going to go after a tackle.
So do you believe they were going to take a tackle regardless?
Yeah.
So why is that?
Murphy
That's my question. Why would they take a tackle regardless?
It's because they're tired of their revolving door at right tackle, and they have a guy there that they can wait to learn the ropes.
Okay.
Similar to the way that they drafted Myles Murphy last year, knowing that you have 2 starting defensive ends that he's not going to have to play right away. Similar to the way that Dax Hill, knowing you have 2 starting safeties 2 years ago, knowing you're going to have to play all the snaps. The Bengals have done this. Myles Murphy, kind of a project. Dax Hill really wasn't, but
he's
just not very.
He's moved positions now.
Yeah, moved to cornerback.
So
hopefully he finds a role there.
It's worked out so far. That's the good news.
We good?
We good?
I'm great. I just think that it's I guess everybody can make fun of me and think that I'm crazy, and I guess I was crazy about Jake Browning last year too. I'll stand on islands. I'll stand on islands.
Trace,
I'll stand on islands because don't come crying back to me when Amarius Mims starting in week 6 when Trent Brown's out because he's been hurt every other year, and then all of a sudden he looks. And then all of a sudden, no, I don't want to hear it. And then all of a sudden, no, listen to me. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, he's kind of like DeJuan Jones. He's just so freaking big. He's actually serviceable. Turns out that he played against, I don't know, elite level talent his entire career, and just because he wasn't playing Rutgers and Purdue and other some random college football games every single week, turns out he's actually ready to go. Turns out that if you're, I don't know, maybe playing against elite level competition your whole life, and then all of a sudden you get thrown in against other elite level players, you won't look out of sorts.
Nobody's saying he isn't good to play in the NFL this year. They're saying he's not going to start because the position's filled. As of today.
And all I'm saying is that the Bengals drafted him specifically not to be a long-term project like everyone's suggesting. Not to be like a Pro Bowler in 2 or 3 years from now because he has to learn all these things. I think they drafted him because he's
right away. So he's a Pro Bowler right away.
We're saying
why are we
going
that far about it? Why are we going that far about it?
I'm just taking what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is very like I think that
He's
maybe
have to learn the
you
ropes.
can twist my words all you want. If you want to do that, you perfectly can. But they didn't. I guess we're the crux of the issue is what is a project? A project to me is somebody that you don't want to. If you put him out there this year, you're in a terrible spot because he's not ready at all. That's a project. That's a project. A project's a guy that if you rely on them, you're basically hosed.
Okay, so
right? Because what is a project? Let's get to the crux of it then. Let's have fun today. What is a project exactly to you guys?
I don't think I will use a different word than project then because I don't think that's what he is either. Because I think he's going to start next year.
So now my argument is valid that I don't think he's a project. So now we're changing the word to project.
Well, your definition of project is 2 or 3 years, and that's not.
Yeah, he's starting next year. He's starting next season. Trent Brown signed a 1-year deal.
Right. He's going to start in year 2.
So what's a project then? Give me another project in the
NFL. You're just obsessed with the word project. I don't think anybody you can call it a blank. You can call him a blank canvas because we don't know what's going to happen yet. If that is better, he's a blank can. The Bengals drafted a blank canvas. If he plays this year, great. You'll start painting away on the little canvas. Project. The word is meaningless. He is not going to start on day one. He knew that.
So do projects.
They talked.
Listen,
they talked with him about this.
If he starts at day one, that's amazing.
Great. It's great. Everybody's cheering.
That's
parties.
That's
is it,
amazing.
Or does it just mean Trent Brown's not good?
That's amazing because it goes beyond the expectations of what we as fans have and what the Bengals as an organization have. The expectation is that he will sit behind Trent Brown, and that if Trent Brown goes down, he will play, but that he will start behind him. That's the expectations.
Interesting. So essentially, to be clear, essentially, if let's just say Trent Brown goes down week 4, and Mims comes out and he's relatively serviceable,
That'd be great.
would you consider him to be a project at that point, or is it just that was a good pick? Like, hey, we got one. That's what I'm arguing. I don't think it's that big of a drop off as everybody's suspecting between Trent Brown and Amarius Mims. And I guess if more or less,
any of us think it's a bad you're saying, like, can we all agree that it was a good pick? Do we think that it's a bad pick? Like, I wanted alignment.
No, what I'm arguing is that the Bengals calculated a decision that they didn't think they had the answer that they ultimately needed at right tackle. So they went out of their way and they got one that they thought could be a serviceable backup if it presented itself. They got an insurance policy that they believe that the drop off between this person and the next person
and that he will start in year
that
2
significant.
And that he will start in year 2.
That's fine. I'm not.
What does that sound like? What does that sound like? A guy that the expectation is that he sits behind someone, and if that guy gets hurt, yeah, he starts, and then in year 2, he's going to be pegged as the starter. What does that sound like? I don't know.
I mean, we're also hoping that he's better than Trent Brown.
That would be amazing, right? That'd be great, but that's not the expectation.
I want to develop a all-pro right tackle.
I just get frustrated at the fact that Bengals fans or you guys more or less use the fact that Trent Brown Amarius Mims isn't ready right now. He's not good enough right now.
I mean, let's just take a look at the depth chart for the Bengals. That would answer that question. How the Bengals view him.
Does it just? I guess since the Bengals have decided who's good and who's not good. Who was the kicker that they cut? 5-10 years ago? Elliott? Was that the guy?
Jake Elliott.
Jake Elliott. They cut him. I mean, hell, he should have just started kicking.
Yeah,
for
they drafted Akili
UFL.
Smith back in 1999, right, Trace?
All right, they got Brad Robbins. So whatever the Bengals do, let's just use that as the perfect way to figure out whether or not somebody.
Can you do me one more favor
while
we're on this?
Please.
Bring up Jesse Bates somehow. Shoehorn that one in too.
I mean, you keep thinking Jesse Bates. I guess he's not worth it. You're a Jesse Bates hater, so congratulations. One of the few guys that somehow thinks that Jesse Bates was great decision. Just get rid of the best safety in the league. That works out. Imagine watching the guy leave your team, be the best safety in the league, and then being like, great. I love that. I'm all for it. Let me try to justify it. Instead of just saying, yeah, would have been nice to have him around.
I told you.
Went from one of the best defenses in the NFL to literally the worst.
I told you that the cheese on the trap was a trap. I told you the cheese on that little copper plate was a trap, and you still chewed it off. You did the whole Jesse Bates thing.
So what we've established here is Trent Brown, or not Trent Brown. Amarius Mims is a project, a long-term project. We won't see him until year 7.
Yeah, I think you guys want to sit there and take the rationale that I said that they took him at 18. And you decided to twist it and make it into this big to-do, and that's perfectly fine. I don't think you take the 18th pick in the draft when you have hopes and aspirations of winning the Super Bowl and you put it into a situation where you don't think the guy's going to basically play year one no matter what. No, I don't. I don't think you do that. I don't think good organizations more times than not do that and it works out. Now, if you want to use the quarterback as a position group of saying maybe I'll buy into that. That's why Falcons, I'll give them a pass. Because the quarterback positions, as we've said before, I'm just saying, it's one of the most important positions that there is. If it is one, without question, the most important position on the field, as we know, in the NFL. So if you want to say, you know what, we're willing to take maybe 1 or 2 years to where we think we could get the quarterback of the future in the draft because we don't think that he'll ever come back around again, or we have a chance to get somebody that we really, really like, sure. But outside of the quarterback position, I am hard-pressed to believe that when you think you have a chance to win the Super Bowl the very next year, you don't draft somebody that you think is probably going to make an impact immediately at some point. Like, I think that the Bengals, to be clear, drafted Mims thinking in their mind he was going to have to start in his rookie season at some point. Why? Because they got a guy that is not reliable playing right tackle, and at some point, inevitably, he's going to get hurt, and guess who's going to have to fill that void? It's going to be the project guy. That's my whole argument. And if you don't think that they took a tackle on purpose because of that reason, then I guess we just differ on what they believe. They're not going to come out in the front offices of Paycor and be like, boy, I'll tell you what, we were sweating it in the draft room because we were really worried that all those offensive tackles were going off the board. And if we didn't get Mims, then we were going to find ourselves in a spot this year where we had literally nobody at right tackle because Trent Brown inevitably at some point is going to go down. We're praying he doesn't. We're hoping he doesn't. But nobody actually believes Trent Brown's going to be healthy this year. So we'll see what ends up happening. That's what I believe happened inside the Bengals war room behind closed doors. Yes, I do. I don't think the Bengals believe in Trent Brown one iota.
Will Mims start on day one?
So that's what that means, I guess. Since they don't believe in Trent Brown,
he just asked a question.
I'm just asking a question.
Will
Mims start on day one?
They won't do it because they won't do it because it's the same way that they'll let Jonathan Nia start the season at second base. Yes. Because he's the cap. No, to be clear, he's the captain. He's the guy. You can't get rid of him yet because
at all.
It's very much the same thing. But at some point,
he's a 35-year-old veteran that signed a 1-year contract for $2 million.
Gotcha.
Will Mims start on day one?
It's the same reason Will Myers started in right field until they realized that maybe at some point
But
there's
will he
somebody
start?
better.
But will he start on day one?
If he's healthy, he'll start on day
Mims
one.
will start. Mims will start if he's healthy on day one.
No. If Trent Brown is healthy, he'll start on day one.
Okay.
I'll place a wager with you if you want.
I don't want to place a wager.
No, you guys want to have fun? We can have fun.
Reed can place the wager this time.
Will Trent Brown play more than 9.5 games this year? Will he play 10 games this year? You guys are trying to win a Super Bowl. You got your answer at right tackle, and now we're going to argue and we're going to debate whether a guy can play less than half the season.
Once again, I'm over this. I don't
So-
know what we're arguing about.
So
I logged out.
I understand Trace's argument. I do. I just don't think it's correct. I think that's what the crux of the problem is.
I think
we all
very well knew that they were getting.
Trace is just arguing that Mims isn't as big of a project as
he's not
as we think he is. Now I don't know
what's the rationale, but why is he such a big project exactly?
I don't even think he's that big of he is a project, but he's not that big of a project because he's going to start next year. Like that's the whole reason why they picked him at 18. They have every intention to start him, and they think he's talented enough. Personally, I think, like you said before, if Trent Brown does get hurt, that the drop off from Brown to Mims isn't that significant. But you start your best players regardless, and you let the guys behind them develop into something more, right?
You think that the NFL that the best players always 100% start regardless? You think that sometimes the perception of who guys are and what they were supposed to be don't get in the way of that?
If they were all in, Trace, they will start the best players. That's what I think. If they are all in. But if they're not all in, then maybe we're having a different conversation. which is what initially led to this whole argument, was whether or not the Bengals were all in or not, which I don't know if they are. So
I think they're all in.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
I don't even want to talk about the all-in thing because the all-in thing just.
Reed's defeated over there.
Well,
His
no,
brain's
the
mush.
all-in thing. We always talk about like the Los Angeles Rams. They went all in and they won a Super Bowl. It's the same argument, just in a different sport as like.
So you guys win, to be clear, no matter what, right? That's the funny part to me is that if Mims starts day one or if Mims starts week 3, plays the rest of the year, you guys are just like, oh, we're excited about it, we're great, and you should be. I'm not suggesting that you wouldn't be, but then you're going to turn around and tell me that he's a project. Yeah,
I think
at that point, who's right? I just want to be clear because last year I think I did the same thing. I sat here and I said straight to the camera. Everybody made fun of Trace. Oh, Jake Browning's the worst quarterback in the history of the league. He's never been given a chance.
No,
I mean, listen. Is this not the truth? Is this not the truth?
I gave you credit for that.
Well, I don't care if you give me credit or not. But now you sit here and we're like, oh, Trace has never been on an island before about the Bengals and been right. So I guess I'll be on the island again. I guess what makes me right now? If Amarius Mims is playing in the playoffs, am I right?
No,
Here's where you're right.
I think you were just arguing semantics. I don't think nobody's winning. Nobody's
I'll
losing.
tell you this right now. If you tell me you draft a guy as a project, he's not starting in the playoffs.
If they do what they did last year and they start Amarius Mims week 1 and cut Trent Brown like they did last year with Jonah Williams and then they cut Lyle Collins.
Here's where he's right. If Amarius Mims is starting over a healthy Trent Brown, if Trent Brown goes out, like gets hurt,
also right if Trent Brown's hurt.
If Trent Brown gets hurt,
No one said that we think Trent Brown's going to play 17
If Trent Brown
games.
gets hurt and then he comes back 4 weeks later and is still sitting the bench, Trace is 100% right.
Yeah.
If Trent Brown gets hurt for 3 weeks and never sees the field again because Amarius Mims is better, Trace is 100% right at that point.
The whole thing,
where would you?
If
where's
Mims starts week
where's
1,
the misconnect there?
I'll literally
Because
bring in
if they
Trace
didn't,
okay.
if Trent Brown then becomes
Give him his
healthy and then
flowers.
you just try to, he's not getting the field anymore after he gets healthy, after he tweaked his ankle or something, never sees the field again, then obviously Mims was better than Trent Brown. Right?
I just think that it seems as I'm showing my receding hairline here on the thing, it just seems like the idea that the Bengals don't think of Amarius Mims as a project of a tackle it just seems objectively wrong. But I've been wrong before, so.
All I said, which
guy
was
that's
the
played
part that
400
you
snaps
guys,
in
I
eight
don't know
games.
how hard it sounded. All I said was when you take the 18th pick in an NFL draft, when you expect to win the Super Bowl next year, it's hard for me to believe that you don't think that guy has a chance to play for you the following year. And that's what you're arguing.
No, that's what the Bengals have done with their last 3 picks.
Well, I'm saying
That's what they've done
when
with
we
each
say
of
a
the last
lost
3
me there.
picks.
You lost me.
No, when we say a project,
You had your only defender,
lost
and
me.
you threw him out to the wolves.
Because we've said this whole time that he's going to start next year, 100%.
We all agree that.
I'm saying
we all agree that
100%.
Trent Brown
I
probably
meant the
gets
following. The
hurt.
next year is in like his rookie season. His rookie season, I have a hard time believing that you don't think is that with the 18th pick when you go to play in a Super Bowl, they're going to play the rookie season. I have a hard time believing that.
Nobody's saying he won't play. They're saying they won't start on day 1.
Right. And
So it's a
that's the whole
project for
point.
3 weeks. Frank Pollock's, he's got it so polished down there.
The only
that
difference of
he's gonna
opinion.
have him ready to
the
roll
only
after
difference
3
of
weeks.
the only difference of opinion any of us have in this room is that your definition of project is like 7 years. That's the only difference of opinion in this room is that the definition of project is being lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, a project to me is like
Because you don't
sit
think
behind
you
a guy for
because you
for-
don't think
for
he'll
a full-
because you don't think Mims will start on day 1. That's a fact. You don't think that will happen. They told Mims he's not starting on day 1. Mims has come out and said, "I'm going to learn from Trent Brown and Orlando Brown."
Right.
He's come out and said that.
Which is a really good preconceived notion, right? That already proves the point that I was making, that the Bengals already have a preconceived notion in their mind of what's going to happen. Oh, we're gonna automatically sit him behind Trent Brown because we already know he's better. When you really don't know. But you know what? That's fine. It's almost like I went out and I'd hire a guy that's got a much higher pedigree than everybody else, supposedly done X, Y, and Z, has a significant bigger following, does all these things. You bring him into the building, you think he's better than everybody, and then you realize maybe he's not better than everybody. And then it takes some time before you realize that, and then at some point you realize, you know what? The guys I already have in the building maybe are better. But it takes some time because you have a preconceived notion of that before you get there. And I'm just saying, I'm glad. Kudos to the Bengals for thinking they already got a guy that's better.
I like that example. That was a good example.
That was a good one.
Well, I mean, at some point, you again, I think people think I'm crazy. That's fine. Maybe I'm running on 4 hours of sleep, and maybe that's part of it. But I also think
not an excuse guy.
The definition of project is the crux of the issue. I agree with that.
Yeah,
I think that's 100%. The crux of the issue
is
the project, because in my opinion, when you say you got a guy a project, you don't, under no circumstance, if you're telling me that a guy's a project, you under no circumstance would want them to be on the field in their rookie season, because that would be a huge deficit to your team, because you're relying on somebody that's not ready at all. And what I'm saying is, if you put him out there week 4 max, week 4, week 5, it's not going to be that big of a difference.
Can I make an example really quickly of like Jordan Love? The first 8 weeks was like, and then he kind of caught his groove and took off.
He's already
for the final
conceded on the
8 weeks.
quarterback position.
I know, but I'm saying if you're wanting to make a similar comparison, the same thing can happen to Mims, where he's not ready to start the season, but by the time we reach the bye week, he's ready to go, and then that's still somewhat of a project. That's like a week project instead of a month project. I don't know how you want to look at it, but it's still,
so if you want
it's
to
still
use the
development.
word if a project means that after 4 or 5 weeks he's ready to go, then sure, he's a project. Then
Okay.
But some guys learn quick.
Okay,
then
we
I
got
guess,
it. We got it.
Then I guess Jermaine Burton's a project. Then that's fine. Jermaine Burton's a project. Chris Jenkins a project. Every player on the team's a project. Yeah.
I mean, all rookies are, in a way. We're hoping that you mold them and develop them into something more than what they are the rookie season.
So everybody's a project. Good to know.
And this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Some are saying this show's a project.
It's been under development for how long? 2 years now?
2 years.
We're still working on it.
It's still a project.
We're still tweaking on it.
Yeah. Some would call it a bust.
There it is.
All right. We'll be back better than ever tomorrow. Take care, everybody.